What's a 5-star meal on a budget? Okay, as the Russian, I'm telling you potato is best food there is. It's cheap, you can cook it multiple different ways so you won't get tired of it, also won't get bad easily, or get rotten. My ancestors survived cold winters and wars just by eating potato. You can slice it into thin slices and fry or just boil it with hot water or oven it, barbecue it, literally everything. Potato is best. I make hobo dinner when I go camping. Ground beef, onions, carrots, potatoes, and a bit of garlic. Wrap it all in tinfoil, I prefer the non-stick kind, throw it on some coals in your campfire. My friends who've never camped with me are always impressed. Spog, or salt, pepper, onion, garlic, is a basic seasoning base in the cooking world that's used in crazy amounts of food. That crap is amazing without adding any other flavors, but you should add some smoked paprika to the mix anyway. Baked potato with cheese and broccoli on top. Buy a pound of baking potatoes, a block of cheese, and a frozen bag of broccoli. It'll make you at least 3 to 6 of those. If you're feeling really crazy, you can throw in some chili as well. Canned chili for hot dogs works best. It can be as cheap as like 50 cents. I came here to say baked potato. I grew up so broke that we had potatoes at least once a day. There are so many ways to make them. Potato cakes were a staple. Just mashed potatoes mixed with flour and an egg to bind it. Fry that up in some oil. Horrible for you, I'm sure, but it's delicious. Sometimes Little Caesars throws pizzas in the dumpster outside after close. When I was homeless, I dated the night manager at McDonald's. I got a sack of dumpster-bound burgers big enough to feed me for the next 24 hours, and all it cost me was doing the deed with someone I was already boinking with anyway. Buttered toast with cinnamon and sugar. We used to keep a pre-mixed container of cinnamon and sugar because we ate this so frequently as kids, and my mum got sick of helping us fix our gosh-awful proportions. Buttered noodles. Spaghetti with oil and garlic. Quick, easy, and cheap. White bread garlic toast. Fried eggs and toast. The narrator is ashamed to admit that he's grown luxurious in his old age and primarily eats fancy sourdough and exclusively poaches free-range organic eggs. But no judgment if you're on a tighter budget and can only do white bread. I was a single mom in university. To stretch my budget, I made homemade soups. Every day for years, I had homemade soup for lunch and sometimes dinner as well. Do you have any tips for making your own soup? First, homemade stock. Bones, water, apple cider vinegar, and salt. I just learned this one a year ago, and the apple cider vinegar is the key. Google stock with ACV and you can get the right proportions. Second, dried beans are cheaper and better than canned. Check out the video Carla Make Beans on YouTube. 3. I do a lot of the tedious work ahead of time. I'll peel and freeze garlic cloves. I find they're easier to slice thin when they're frozen. I'll also cook and freeze other veggies I plan on using so I can stock up when things are on sale. And 4. For recipes, my favorite site is allrecipes.com. Stir fry, chicken and rice, and tears. So many tears, instead of soy sauce. It's lower sodium. Pour dessert, flour tortilla with butter, cinnamon, and sugar. Cream cheese and jam is also really good on a tortilla. Only had the chance because we got cream cheese from the food bank that one time, but damn. Ramen, drained with no broth, with poor man's pad thai sauce. Basically, you mix a tablespoon of peanut butter into a small ramekin with enough soy sauce and sriracha to be able to thoroughly mix it into a smooth sauce. Dump it over the cooked ramen and baby, you've got a stew going. It tastes good, it's got a bit of protein, bit of fat, bit of carbs, little sweet, little heat. It's not the greatest nutrition you could eat, but it's way better for you than Oreos, and if you want to clean up the macros a little, you can sub PB2 for the peanut butter and coconut aminos for the soy, and that'll cut the fat and sodium in at least half. And it's vegan, if you care about that at all. I've been making this basically exactly the same way, and I can't recommend enough adding any kind of acid, whether lemon or lime or whatever. It really turns it up to 11 by making it less heavy and having more complex flavors. Also, put an egg on top. Just do it. Potatoes in every way possible. Wow, so many fellow spud enthusiasts. To set the record straight, I'm a female, French by blood, raised by Lithuanians, and not an Irishman. I see ya, latkeys. Serious answer here, get a can of black beans and some cheap salsa. Put the drained beans and some salsa in a skillet and let it cook for like 10 minutes. Crack a couple of eggs and let them poach in the beans. Serve with cheap bread or tortilla. All very cheap ingredients and it's super high in protein, so it's filling and healthy. You can also saute in any veggies you have sitting around, or put in whatever spices you have lying about. A couple of people are mentioning shakshuka. That's where I got the inspiration for this dish. My boyfriend doesn't like tomatoes, but we love Tex-Mex flavors, so I made up this altered version for us. Macaroni and cheese. Grilled cheese sandwich. Okay, I'm getting lots of replies from people making some fancy as all heck sandwiches, and don't get me wrong, I'm not mad about it, but a cheap grilled sandwich made with stale white Wonder Bread, I can't believe it's not butter, and some Kraft singles holds a special place for me. Ramen with a side of ramen flushed down with water. Save some crunchy ramen in the beginning, then sprinkle it on top at the end. Picante beef is the best flavor. Poor man's stew. Ground beef, potatoes, and onions. Let the potatoes and onions cook with the already cooked ground beef in a pot of water. Add salt and pepper to taste. Yum. Quesadilla. Basically just a more ethnic grilled cheese. Straight up peanut butter. Don't say you've never filled up that way. It can be a great survival food too. Take a jar of peanut butter, throw in some nuts and raisins and toss it in a backpack, and you have a delicious, high-carb, high-protein, high-energy snack that can keep you going for days in a tough situation. A grilled cheese sandwich with a side of Campbell's bean and bacon soup. It'll set you back about at $1.50. Campbell's tomato soup is also an excellent side. Walk-in tacos. Basically, you get a snack-sized bag of your favorite chips and fill it with taco meat, lettuce, tomatoes, sour cream, and stuff like that. Now you have walk-in tacos. For those wondering or asking, I was showed this a few years ago by my cousin that worked for a traveling carnival. We've used everything from Yardbirds to McDonald's patties for the meat. Walk-in taco or taco in a bag, walk-in taco sounds better in my opinion, it's like BK. It's have it your way. Make it how you want. Yes. Classic Midwestern dish. Classy and convenient. Here's some tips though. Use Doritos. Crush them up before you put anything in. You don't need cheese when using Doritos unless you want that extra cheesy goodness, which I highly recommend. And for some reason, they just taste better when you eat it with a plastic fork. They just do. Beans on toast with some grated cheese on top. A campfire and a can of beans. Hopefully baked beans, but whatever the food shelf is providing that day is all right. I put some mac and cheese inside a grilled cheese sandwich. Delicious. The narrator can confirm that at his gamer bar lately, he had a gourmet fried sandwich that weirdly had mac and cheese inside, and it was actually damn good. And I'm certain that a non-gourmet version would hold true to the same standard. Beans and rice. You can get massive bags of dried rice and beans for pretty cheap at wholesale stores, and a big bag will last you a long time. Add a little butter and some cheap spices, and you've got yourself a tasty and healthy meal. Sleep. I've had to sleep through dinner and breakfast many times. Hope all of you who are currently in that situation will have better days. They're coming, trust me. Crap on a shingle, aka creamed chipped beef on toast. Such an underrated dish. Is it a Midwestern dish? Because some people look like I'm crazy when I mention it. Add some peas to throw in some extra fiber. Shepherd's pie. Canned corned beef hash. Enough salt to pickle ya, but absolutely delicious on buttered bread. Mac and cheese with cut-up hot dogs. Did nobody else have rice with ketchup or butter growing up? I forgot about buttered rice. But with a little butter, flour, and either milk or broth, you can have rice and gravy. Cheap, delicious calories. 333 chili. Super easy, cheap, and satisfying. I say 333 because all it needs is 3 kinds of canned beans, peppers, and 3 onions. I use a serrano pepper as well because I like the heat. Add 2 tins of canned tomatoes, chop and mix everything, let it simmer on a stove uncovered for at least 1.5 hours. The longer the better. Add any kind of broth as needed. It's filling, cheap, and awesome. Serves 4 or more. A perfectly soft-boiled egg. Can I offer you a nice egg in these trying times? Boil 1 cup of white rice for 20 cents, add cilantro if you have it, prepare 2 cups of black beans, it's about $1.39, soak 24 hours or cook in an Instapot from dry. Melt a tablespoon of neutral oil of choice. I prefer olive, but butter works. Olive oil is pricey, so butter is a go for a poverty budget. Dice a half onion, 25 cents, and fry in oil. When translucent, add soaked beans to the fried onions, stir in oregano, cayenne, chili pepper, cumin, black pepper, garlic salt, and a teaspoon of lime juice concentrate. Let the flavors mingle until cooked. This will make you a dish that's under 50 cents total per serving. Scoop beans over some rice, and as an option, you can top it with a little cheese and sour cream or diced tomato for 75 cents. The upfront cost really isn't much, and you can stock it in bulk. 1 batch costs about $3 and makes 4 servings. Don't skimp on the oregano. You can get a lot of it for cheap. Start grating your own cheese. That bagged crap is stupid expensive. You can get a lot more variety, better flavor, and more volume if you grate your own cheese. I used to love pork and beans as a kid, sweet beans and cut-up hot dogs. Loco Moco. White rice, hamburger patty, gravy with an egg on top. Chili on baked potatoes. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Every cuisine in the world's poor people dishes are usually their best ones. Maybe I'm just generalizing. For example, white gazpacho from Spain was a peasant meal. The base of it is garlic, stale bread soaked in water to soften it, and almonds. American barbecue could actually be the poster child of this idea, in my opinion. A basic Korean meal can be very cheap. For example, white rice, kimchi, doenjang jjigae, similar to miso soup, some other side dishes like prepared bean sprouts, pickled radish, and cucumbers, fried egg on top of the rice, bonus if you have some dried seaweed to wrap the rice in with your chopsticks. This is a bit basic, but mixing all of the banchan and rice with some red pepper paste or gochujang and sesame oil, you can make a bibimbap, which is awesome. Cacio e pepe. It's just spaghetti with a sauce that you make from reserved pasta water, a crap ton of parmesan, and black pepper. It's delicious, and since the cheese is going to be melty, you don't need high quality. Just one step above sawdust shaker cheese. French omelettes. Eggs, milk, butter, salt and pepper. It does require some practice to make them right, but after you do, you'll have a quick and delicious meal in a second. I forgot to put the word cream after milk actually. The ingredients are eggs, milk, cream, butter, salt and pepper. Also, I know some places will say it doesn't need milk cream, but the scary Frenchman who taught me this dish says it goes with milk cream, so I'm sticking with it. Eggs in a basket, sometimes called toad in the hole. Cut out a circle in a piece of bread, toast it up in a pan with melted butter, crack an egg in the middle, and use bread remnants to dip in the runny yolk. So simple, but it feels fancy. What is this? I think you'll find toad in the hole is actually sausage in Yorkshire pudding. In the UK, what you're describing is called egg in the hole. That is the narrator's experience as well. Although it does make me wonder why toad in the hole is called toad in the hole, as there is no hole cut in anything, nor is the meat remotely reptilian. Up next, a mega comment about how to get the most out of your rice. Congee. Add rice and lots of water to a pot, keep it plain or sprinkle some chicken bouillon powder and fresh ginger slices. Cook until it reaches creamy porridge consistency. Top your bowl with scallions. I make this when I'm feeling sick since it's easy on the stomach. And if you'd like to level up the dish, here are some tips from my Cantonese grandma who's been doing this for the last 60 years. You can marinate the rice in sesame oil overnight in the fridge, just enough to coat the rice granules. It makes it a better consistency. Short grain rice is best. For a bad time, use basmati or brown rice. Scallions are awesome. Coriander is good too if you're one of those lucky people who's blessed with the genes to enjoy it. Deep-fried garlic mince brings all the boys to the yard. If you're feeling rich, throw in a bunch of dried scallops. If you're using dried scallops, don't add any salt until the scallops are properly cooked. Dried scallops have quite a lot of salt content and it all gets released once they soften up. Drop an egg in right at the end and let the heat cook it. Has to be a room temperature egg, otherwise it won't cook well enough. Best is when the yolk is almost runny. Drop in some Chinese rice wine at the end for something different. If you're feeling lazy, throw it all in the rice cooker using 3 times the amount of water you'd normally use. When it's done, it'll still look like rice, but you'll have to stir it up a little to make it into a congee. Add boiling water for the desired consistency. If you have to boil it on the stove, use high heat, not low. High heat makes it boil and keeps it circulating. Low heat lets it sink to the bottom and hence is more prone to burning. Once it burns, the whole pot of congee is ruined. If you absolutely have to salvage burnt congee, do not scrape the bottom because scraping will release even more burnt congee. Add lots of ginger and garlic to try masking the burnt flavor. But I think you're better off disposing it and chalking it up to a lesson learned. Congee is so cheap and life's too short for bad congee. If you have roast duck, save the bones and neck. Boil them into a broth and use the broth to make the congee. Add leftover shredded roast duck meat to top it off. If you can get some bacon bones, boil them into a broth and use them to make the congee. You're having prawns? Why not save the shells and heads and boil them into broth to make the congee with as well? In fact, use any broth to make the congee. It's better than using water by itself. Chicken bouillon works, but it has less oomph to it. Another way to add flavor is to boil some chicken breast and use the broth to make congee. Shred said chicken breast into thin strips to be added later to the mix. This makes a healthier congee with very little chicken fat and lots of protein. Crispy youtiao goes very well with congee. That crispy youtiao coated in soft, tasty bits of congee gives a very sensual play on the mouthfeel. Pepper is very good with congee. Doesn't matter black or white. I suggest getting your hands on some Sarawak pepper. They're the best. Some people like their congee spicy. I suggest getting some chili oil and adding it to your liking. If you like century eggs, it goes very well with congee too. If you don't like century eggs, why not crack in a salted duck egg? If you've got some boiling hot congee, throw in some thinly sliced fresh fish fillet and let the heat cook them away from the stove. We'll almost always cook them to a perfect consistency. Usually use harrow-on fish, but I suppose salmon would work as well. Serve congee in clay pots if you have some. Clay pots retain heat very well and keep congee hot longer. But if you do the above, I don't think your congee will stay in your bowl for very long. Congee brings back memories of times when I was too sick to properly stomach solid food. It's become a comfort food now. Grandma died from cervical cancer a few years ago. Ladies, please go get your screening done and get your Gardasil vaccination. Cervical cancer is easily preventable these days. Grilled cheese and cream of tomato soup. Mac and cheese with ground beef, taco mix, and baked in a pie plate with breadcrumbs and extra cheese on top. It's just amazing. Definitely rice and beans or lentils, but for a fancy-looking cheap dish, stuffed squash. Get a big squash, cut it in half, scoop the seeds out and fill the cavity with whatever stuffing your heart desires and circumstance will allow. Stale bread, cornbread, cooked rice, barley or really any grain, and just boxed stuffing. A bit of browned sausage can be nice, but you don't need a ton. Some salt and bits of herb like parsley or thyme if you have them. Bake it and you've got something that looks nice but didn't cost much at all. Eggs cooked in many different ways. I prefer omelettes with chopped veggies. Sloppy joes. Cornbread and pinto beans. I go with southern buttermilk cornbread and la preferida pinto frioles. The narrator really wants to try more cornbread. It's one of those things that we just don't do in Northern Europe at all. Like, it has to be good to have stayed in cuisine despite being regarded as a pretty humble dish, right? SOS. Hamburger steak on mashed potatoes and toast with brown gravy. That's much different from the SOS that I grew up with. The one I'm familiar with is also called cream chipped beef. It's chipped beef with white cream gravy over it, usually served over toast. Burritos. Rice, butter, and cheese. Chicken-flavored ramen. Tuna casserole. Cigarette and coffee. Cheese on toast. Toast one side of your bread under the grill on a medium-high heat, flip the bread, put your cheese on it, whack it under the grill until it's melted. Tastes better than a cheese toastie, but it's less cheese per slice. For sandwiches, ham, cheese, and salami is filling as frick on the right bread and costs next to nothing. Sausage pilaf. This recipe is cheap as dirt and I can recommend a few different things for it, but let's see what you think. Get cheap sausages, the kind you can oven cook. Chicken, leek, and sweet corn pasta. And then there's lapskaus, a Norwegian stew. Get carrots, a swede, lots of floury potatoes, and whatever cheap yet flavorful meats you can find. Anything with hot sauce, pretty much. 2 scrambled eggs, a wrap, and some hot sauce, and I'm good until lunch. The poor man's steak, seasoned hamburger patty with sautéed mushrooms and onions on top. Do you know a ratatouille was originally a poor man's meal? Well, you'd have to be pretty poor to eat a DVD. Hamburger helper or hot dogs and beans. I grew up with this stuff in Detroit. We were dirt poor, but my mother always found ways for us to have a good meal. Eggs scrambled into rice and a little bit of hoisin sauce, filling as frick. Asians have got it figured out, man. Can of soup and boiled potato. Little Caesar's pizza. Not the best pizza, but $10 for 2 large pizzas is a pretty good price, and it doesn't taste half bad. Bean burritos and quesadillas. Bonus points if you find a hot sauce that you really like. It's called Poor Knights, and it's basically cheese with toast or bread in a pan. Pretty tasty. Tater tot casserole. Microwaved baked potato. My dad lived on his own from age 14, and he had all kinds of poor man dinners like boiled chicken, and it's as bad as it sounds. My absolute favorite was pasta shells with cheese whiz and canned tomatoes. When I was strapped, I'd buy a 99-cent box of mac and cheese from Aldi along with a $1.45 jar of pasta sauce. I'd make the pasta, stir in the sauce, and add the powdered cheese. The sauce took the place of the milk and the butter, which were too expensive at the time. I could get 2 or 3 meals out of that. These suggestions have made me realize my family was poor when I was growing up. There's nothing like a campfire and a can of beans. Tom Waits' lucky day. Spam casserole. I don't know the recipe, but it's Spam, elbow macaroni, and a cream sauce of some sorts. It was stupid cheap to make, and my mum made it a lot when I was a kid. I didn't know what poor was, and I didn't know that was us, but I do know we stopped eating it around the age of 17 or so. That's when I was about 23. My mum was like, "Oh, you should come over for dinner. What do you want me to make?" I thought about it and was like, "Ooh, that's Spam casserole. Not had that one in ages." She was shocked and asked why I wanted it. I told her I loved that growing up. She then informed me she only made it because we were broke as frick and it was all she could afford to make, and she felt guilty for years that she made it so often. I simply told her, "Wow, I loved it. I thought we had it so often because I liked it." Oatmeal with banana and milk if available. Well, fried Spam, scrambled eggs and rice. White trash fried rice, as I call it. If you want, you can throw in any veggies you have on hand. Personally, I just like the 3 main ingredients, maybe a little bit of soy sauce on the rice. Project donuts. Take some biscuit dough, cut holes in the center, fry it in a skillet, sprinkle some powdered sugar or spread cake icing on top. It's better than Dunkin' Donuts. Also, you can make donut holes out of the center. What's something harmless your parents did to you as a kid that really screwed you up as an adult? My dad was a huge yeller. Any little thing that went wrong was a full-on expletive-filled barrage. It never scared me or anything because he wasn't violent. However, in my adult life, my wife and I will argue and she'll tell me to stop yelling. I don't have the same yelling scale as other people, it seems, so I think I'm holding back and she thinks I'm yelling. It's very difficult to judge internally, but I'm working on it. My dad's yelling made me terrified of people raising their voices. Same. I full-on panic if I hear that particular tone in someone's voice, even if it's not directed at me. Fortunately, I'm not a yeller myself, though. It's actually really sad. I think his father was far worse, so it's just how he communicates, and I'm not sure he's aware how hurtful it is to others. "I'm not yelling!" My father yelling. Making it a rule that I could hang out with friends once a week until I graduated high school. I started losing friends very, very quickly. People just wouldn't invite me places because I could never go. The nights I could go out, I had to be back by 8. In high school, before high school it was earlier. So I really didn't have anyone. Nobody wanted to hang out from 5 to 8 on a Friday night. They wanted midnight or so. I completely lack the confidence to make friends now. I haven't had a friend over in years. I'm 28 and my birthday is coming up. When I turn 30, I can't have a party. I'd have nobody to invite. I had a boyfriend throw me a surprise party for my 24th. His friends showed up and my family showed up. It was uncomfortable seeing like 10 people at a bar be my party when none of them were my friends. My brother ended up inviting his friends to add more people. My dad has an issue of making fun of people's appearances and then quickly saying, "I'm just kidding," followed by compliments. I've realized over the years that this has really messed with my self-esteem. It made me really self-conscious and I never really think I look good. I think in the father's defense, there can be an art to doing this with, and I can't stress this enough, with the right people. Don't do it to your kids all the time. My mum used to joke a lot about my looks. If I stayed in the car for something, she would say, "Show me your ugly face. Good. Now no one will want to kidnap you," etc. Everything she said was, "Because it's funny. You know I don't mean it. You love me because I'm like this." But all it's done is leave me with a mean sense of humor to train myself out of, and constant negativity about myself. I had kinda the opposite experience. My mum would tell me little tips on improving my acne without provocation, then try to tell me I looked just fine. Mixed signals about whether or not I looked fine or not has left me unable to see myself as attractive in any way. After hitting puberty fairly early, anytime my parents saw me in a bathing suit or a tank top and shorts or anything remotely form-fitting, they'd start making jokes about how I was getting fat and needed to watch out if I wanted to stay pretty. I doubt they'd even remember doing it, it was so offhand, but it stuck with me. I was never even remotely close to overweight. I was developing curves, like women do at that age, so by high school I had an eating disorder. I'm at my heaviest now, in recovery, and my BMI has never been above 22. But there's a voice in the back of my mind that I have to fight all the time that tells me actually, I'm on the brink of obesity and I won't be pretty anymore if I eat the second piece of pizza or if I skip out on my 7th day in the row at the gym. My parents did the exact same thing. Offhand little comments, I'm sure they never paid 2 seconds thought. That impacts me to this day. My mother was horrified when I repeated a comment she made to me as a teenager about me eating so much that I'd be as big as a house. Thought there was no way in God's earth she'd ever say that, and I'm like, okay, then why do I remember it 10 years later? And also, why do I have an eating disorder? It almost makes it more hurtful when it's offhand or unintentional. Then you second guess and wonder if they're making jokes to gently tell you their real feelings. Same as you, I've never realistically been overweight, but I have no ability to look at my body and see what's really there. But I'm starting to get better, and I'm glad to hear that someone else is too. Using fast food and candy as an incentive for everything. I was morbidly obese by 11, and high school is rough when you're heavy. It took most of high school to reach a normal weight, and I still count calories and watch my diet carefully to sustain it. There's ample evidence which shows childhood obesity has dramatic effects on adulthood health, even if you manage to lose the weight. I'm glad you lost some weight and are taking steps to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Thanks, it's been more effort to maintain over the past 10 years than it was losing the weight. About 95% of people who go on diets gain it all back or end up at a higher weight. The best way to avoid the trap is to avoid needing to lose weight at all, which comes back to parents helping their kids with healthy eating and exercise. My dad has a temper and yells angrily about everything. Not really at us, but if some little thing doesn't go perfectly the way he wanted, he will just start screaming about it. This has happened so often and still does, and it contributes largely to the severe anxiety disorder I have now. My dad would do this too. It would almost always cause me to start crying, and then he would start yelling at me for crying for no reason. It would get to the point where he would yell if he even thought I was starting to cry, even if I wasn't, and all that has left me with some bad anxiety too. My mum claims that he yells because he's partially deaf and doesn't know how loud he is, but I don't know if I believe that. I get this. I have sound-induced anxiety too because my mum's husband/sperm donor never spoke to me, only yelled at me. Even a car backfiring gives me a mini panic attack. I will mention that this seems to be one of the more common contributors to adult anxiety that has come up in this thread. Parents, save it for the occasions where it's really needed, if at all. My grandmother would never let me leave the house. Now I'm extremely antisocial. It's actually incredible with all the other stories I'm reading that are talking about parents who seem almost bat-crap insane. I'm hearing people who are 14 that were trapped in their houses because their parents were control freaks. I mean, when I was in elementary, I got bullied for never being cool and never being seen outside. I lived in a pretty bad neighborhood, but it wasn't a problem. You guys need to throw your whole parents away. They denied ever sending me and my sister to a day camp at which I was harassed by an adult. Being told that my emotions were wrong/not right. For all the good grades I had, I'm emotionally immature. Yeah, I was straight out not allowed to be angry. It wasn't a written rule, but that's how it worked. No matter the problem at hand, or even if it was a completely reasonable thing to be upset about, putting on an angry face, raising my voice, or changing my voice tone would result in my mother getting very aggressive. And suddenly the actual problem was forgotten, and it was all about the attitude. The only way to actually solve some problems was to repress anger as much as possible. But then she wouldn't take the problems seriously because obviously I wasn't upset over them. But saying something like, "This makes me very angry," even with a fully calm voice, would just get her angry because nothing was ever a reason for me to be angry apparently. But not for her. She could show her anger as much as she wanted. Then she doesn't understand why I don't like to share my problems with her. I guess she's like that because Grandpa used to be one of those angry guys who started shouting very loud at the tiniest issue. I didn't get to know him, but everything she's told me about him went in the same direction. So I guess she's just scared of aggression, and that's why she reacts so strongly to it. Grandpa likely wasn't allowed emotions as a kid. It was also times of war, which likely messed with him too. Sometimes people can be hard to understand, but there's always a reason. Cleaning. My mother always freaked out and screamed anytime something looked messy. The whole cleaning process, picking up items, laundry, dusting, vacuuming, was always a huge ordeal and never good enough for her. I hate cleaning and I try really hard to keep my apartment neat, but I always associate cleaning with screaming. My husband is more messy than I am, and I sometimes can feel myself getting overly agitated with him, and I try so hard not to scream at him over a pile of laundry. I relate to this so darn much. My mother has insane and arbitrary standards for tidiness, and if I don't do something right or don't do it exactly right at the right time, it's yelling time. Getting teased about being a girl just trying to be friends with everyone, including boys. Every single one of them was, "my boyfriend," or "I must have a crush" or something. It can't just be me wanting to have friends. To this day, I really can't get close enough to guys to have a serious relationship. That, and I have a neglectful father, and every time I consider it, I'm petrified of bringing home an actual boyfriend to meet the family because I don't want to be teased anymore. It made me just feel so uncomfortable about who I can, should, or want to be friends with because I'm paranoid my family is mocking me behind my back. It didn't even need to be a friend. Just any story about anything that had occurred at school that happened to have a girl involved. Oh, who is X? Is she your girlfriend? Nowadays it's, how come you never tell us anything about your personal life? I grew up with Indian parents in America. Who are those girls you're talking to? Why are you talking to them? Every girl I talk to they look upon with suspicion to the point where they took me out of school and did homeschool to avoid friends? Seriously, my parents ruined my social skills forever. All I wanted my whole life was to fit in, to be a normal kid. Now they get angry that I don't share stuff with them. I always log out of my social media so they don't view it, and they complain that I'm neglecting my family because I hang out with my friends. I just know I'm going to raise my kids better, differently. I will never trust my parents. As someone whose parents quietly despaired of him ever bringing home any sort of partner until it actually happened, I guess I got the better end of that balance. When I was potty training, my potty was in the middle of the room. I have vague memories of my mum's friends watching me poop and laughing at my poop when I stood up. These memories are confirmed by my mum after I asked her. I'm 100% sure that's the reason I can't poop in public, or even at home if anyone can hear me. If you were anything like my nephew, you may have demanded an audience in the first place. He drags his potty out from the bathroom to the living room and wherever the most spectators are. I can't fault his competence. Gaze upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. My mum, jokingly, she says it was a joke nowadays, asked if I was pregnant every time my time of the month was late. I would spank my lower stomach for hours on end because I thought I was pregnant from sitting on the toilet. I was 12, and I didn't do the deed with anyone until I was 19. Anytime I would cry or express anger, I would be teased for being upset. Aw, she's mad. Aw, wah. Oh, boo-hoo. I ended up shutting down and finding unhealthy ways to cope that eventually plagued my life in more ways than one. They always shrugged off my accomplishments of course you got straight A's, you're so smart, or congrats on this huge accomplishment, but I mean, we're not surprised. What they thought they were doing was complimenting me, and they were doing that. I never saw it was anything else until I grew up and realized I won't try at anything I'm not immediately good at, and feel inferior to anyone who's better than me at something. While they were complimenting my intelligence, they should have been complimenting my work ethic. Now, I struggle with a fixed mindset and feel like a big bucket of wasted potential because I'm so terrified of failure. It's not their fault, they didn't do anything wrong, and we didn't know about the importance of grit and growth mindset back then. Ironically, a lot of smart kids get screwed over by a whole fixed mindset thing, even though they were complimented by it at the time. My parents do the same thing. Them giving me this expectation isn't helpful to my worrisome mind. I'm constantly expected to get better grades than my sister, even though she cheated on a lot of her work. I can account for my fear when my American history teacher told me that I got an 85% on my test. I ran to the bathroom and cried for about 30 minutes. Knowing my parents would be angry, I felt as if I was in a corner with nothing I could do. When she passed the grades out during class, the next day, I got a 95. I was really confused. I asked her about it, and she claimed she never said that I got an 85 on it. I looked through, and I really had a 95. I must have misheard or something, but it ended up seriously damaging my psyche. I seriously wish that I didn't have these expectations at all. I hope that nobody else ever has these, too. Watching my brother get praised for bringing it up to C's and rewarded with a dirt bike, while I sit waiting in the next chair to get reamed for slacking off and failing and then getting punished or grounded because there was one B on my report card. Then again, my dad's biggest parenting achievement was apparently, "At least I didn't get drunk and beat you all the time." Yay. Thanks, Yondu. I was raised in a church where virginity until marriage was sacred. I'd been a victim of the unspeakable act and repeatedly harassed as a child. The messages tumbling around in my mind growing up involved a lot of shame and being inherently unworthy of love. I'm finally in therapy for the abuse and more, and undoing the lies I learned so very well. Mum smoked 3 packs per day but didn't want us kids to be around the smoke all the time, so she set up her personal space, i.e. a chair where she reads books anytime she isn't working. Away from us, and we missed out on a whole lot of affection or interaction because of her habit. It took a lot of time and healing to have a healthy relationship with a woman. Happily married 8 years this coming October. Congrats on your marriage. Gosh, that's a mixed viewpoint. I mean, nice that she cared about caring for your health and well-being, but my God, interacting with your kids is so important. She could have taken down her per-day intake to exercise some care with her kids. My mum used to tell my sister and I that she was too claustrophobic to hug us. Didn't have that problem with our little siblings though. I guess the claustrophobia cleared up. My mum used to tell me stories about a big hairy spider that was gonna come bite me if I got out of bed at night. I still frickin' hate spiders. My mother got tickets for a small boat and canal tour in Amsterdam for the two of us. Somehow, as a little kid, I wanted to keep those tickets, 'cause why not? So instead of just giving them, she wanted me to practice mental calculation for a bit. So she gave me a few questions on the lines of, a ticket for an adult costs this much, one for a child, this much, how much should a family pay with X adults and X children? I got 2 or 3 right, the last one on the other hand, I couldn't get it right. She even asked me 3 or 4 times more for the last one, each time more aggravated than the last time. Last answer yet again wrong, and she got kind of too frustrated with me, and she tore the tickets up and the whole boat trip was probably awkward for me. Now, 10 plus years later, I realize I have a fear of failure. I'm scared to screw up the things I do, say, think, and even how I look. Even now, typing this brings me a bit into tears. Worst fear of failure is that I'm very quickly to think that I'll disappoint my parents and my current boyfriend, making me say sorry way too often as well. Moving around. By the time I'd finished elementary school, I'd been to 5 cities and 2 states. I became very good at making friendships and getting into relationships, but I had a very hard time keeping them. My parents were and are helicopter parents. Along with this, they didn't care enough to teach me valuable lessons or anything I'd actually need in life. It was all grades, 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 Allah, Allah, Allah. The result? I lacked many of the social skills people had, such as basic cooking, social skills, etc., and also had and still have social anxiety, especially with authority, even if I don't see them as a threat, which one time ultimately nearly made me take my own life. My parents wanted me to be happy, which sounds fine out of context, but no. I wasn't allowed to be anything but happy. You can bet I would have gotten a lecture for anything less than cheerful. Comfort is antagonizing. Disappointment and annoyance feels shameful, and to this day I don't fully trust anyone at all with my thoughts or feelings. My dad would often playfully hit me in the head with plastic bottles, rolled up newspapers, etc. He usually hit harder than he probably meant to, and then when I'd say ow, he'd tell me to toughen up, that couldn't have hurt, blah blah. Now years later, I still find myself flinching at the most random of things. Oof. There's a saying, all kids deserve parents, but not all parents deserve kids. And I've been thinking it the entire way through recording this. My parents would scream and fight over a lot of stupid things and then blame it on me and not my siblings. When they did that, they brushed it off, didn't think anything was wrong when I cried about it, and yelled at me for being dramatic. I'm a triplet and the middle child, so I always had to do stuff my siblings didn't. When I was around 10, my brother and I had a big fight, and I was forced into anger management therapy. But my brother wasn't, so it really messed with my head. They also talk to the other two a lot, and when I try to say something, they unconsciously ignore me, because they think I'll say something hurtful or stupid. My mum used to make fun of me for fulfilling manly stereotypes, such as only wanting to wear 1 pair of shoes, hated makeup and clothes, shopping, even as a teen, not being able to find something despite it being right in front of me, etc. I'm really insecure about my femininity now. So much to where if I do something annoying that's stereotypically feminine and someone calls me out on it, I'm secretly super flattered that they think I'm girly. I'm also bisexual, so being a woman who likes women sometimes makes me feel really masculine and uncomfortable, even though I know it's irrational. Just laughing at me for getting upset about something stupid and telling me how silly I was being. There's nothing wrong with that, but I was just a sensitive kid and took away from that showing your sad and upset emotions was bad and that it should be avoided in company of others at all costs. It really messed me up in the long term, and I didn't get help because I couldn't talk about it to my parents for the same fear of being laughed at. I can't blame them, and I really don't, because it's really something I see quite a lot of, and with 99% of kids, it's harmless. I, however, am still recovering from years of mental crap. Neglect. Neglect seems harmless. People are busy with their own lives, right? But that lack of love does terrible things to a child. Severe depression, self-esteem issues, trust issues, loneliness becomes normal. Numbness becomes a habit. I wish I were dead, but the medicine helps, a bit. As a child, my parents would send me to bed without dinner if I misbehaved. I'd be so hungry in the middle of the night and I'd scramble up to the pantry and sneak whatever I could, mostly snacks for school lunches. I'd sneak back, squirrel it down, and throw the wrappers away carefully. I was also raised as the good one or the people pleaser. I've struggled with secret eating, binging, portion control, and anxiety for as long as I can remember. Eating never made sense. Couple this with the people-pleasing, and I'm just a chubby, conflicted mess with a high tolerance for all kinds of narcissistic people. I'm a parent now, and it's all clear as day. I'm working on myself, and hopefully I can be better to my kids. Helicopter parenting. I was never out of my mum's sight. I know she's an abuse survivor of a bad home, and I know she really did mean well, but now I'm suspicious of everything and afraid to try new things. Both my parents would sometimes leave randomly without telling me. My mum would leave whenever she was angry at my dad, and I was so young that I thought she would never come back. My dad didn't like to talk about it, and it would sometimes be for extended periods of time. My dad would disappear to the bar and not come home until 1 or 2ish in the morning, where I lived with him. About 13 years old at the time. Neither one sees how this could have negatively impacted me. I still get very scared of people leaving me. They sent me to speech therapy when I was 12. Until then, I had no idea that I had a bit of a speech impediment, and while I was a bit shy, I never felt bad about the way that I spoke. Speech therapy would have been great if I'd wanted to be there. Instead, I was suddenly made to feel like I was terrible at talking, and almost as bad, being forced to fix the way I talked with a bunch of 3 to 5-year-old kids. I had my own teacher, but I still had to wait with all the smaller kids. I was so angry that I actively tried not to do anything that the speech therapist wanted me to do. By my parents' thinking, sending me to speech therapy was probably an investment for my future. Talking is one of the pillars of society, but 15 years later, I still occasionally feel extremely self-conscious about the way my voice sounds, and I dread talking with people that I don't know. I would never tell them this, of course.
People who have visited the US, what is your WTF America story? First night in Los Angeles, watched as a stolen cop car and a million cop cars flew past me down Hollywood Boulevard at 60 miles per hour at 10 p.m. Then I turned and walked back into the Thai restaurant where I watched the fugitive get PIT maneuvered and shot dead live on the news via helicopter chase cam. Dude sitting next to us was excited to tell us we had officially, quote, experienced LA. Over-the-top car chases, action chase cam news, neon lights in Hollywood, an Asian restaurant that made me feel like I was in an art film. He was right. I've told this story on Reddit before, but my biggest WTF was in fall 2005. Google Earth had just come out, and my colleague at the university lab and I were looking at it. She was a blonde bombshell from San Diego, and I'm a portly Indian boy. When I showed her Mumbai, my home city, she was blown away. You have buildings? Look, there's an airport. Oh my god, you have cars? How the heck do you think we got around? I asked. Her reply still rings on in my head. Not walking, not cows, not elephants, not bicycles, not horse-drawn carts. She said camels. If I ever saw a camel in Mumbai, I'd stop everything I'm doing and say, holy crap, that's a freaking camel. Was at an all-you-can-eat buffet with the soft-serve ice cream machine. As kids, we thought we were being little pigs by swirling as high as we possibly could while our parents weren't looking, or they certainly would have stopped us. The guy after us grabbed a full-size drink tumbler and filled it up with ice cream. No shame at all, no childlike glee at making the mother of all Sundays. I suspect now it was something he did regularly. I'm English and visited California about a decade ago. We'd been staying in a small town called Mariposa while we visited Yosemite National Park for a couple of days. My friends had continued their road trip on to Vegas, while I had to head back down to LA and get the plane home. I was waiting for a bus to the station in Mariposa. It was raining, uncharacteristic for April, I was told. A pickup truck pulls up. The first thing I see is a huge dog sitting in the passenger side. Then an old lady, I'm guessing around 60, peers over and asks me, "Where are you heading?" I told her I was going to LA, and she says, "Me too, get in," and starts pushing the dog into the back. Partly out of politeness, but mostly out of curiosity, I jumped in. I think it was around a 3 to 4 hour drive to LA. As we set off, she starts listing all the things we have to do before we get there. Visit a friend to move a trailer, visit another friend who has broken her ankles to feed her dogs, visit a place where she could do her taxes. Quote, that should only take a few hours. It was going to at least double the journey time. Now, in my head, I was saying, heck no, I don't want to do any of that. But I found myself saying, okay. She was super happy. After about half an hour, we arrived at her friend's house. She had 2 huge dogs, and I found myself carrying an industrial-sized bag of dog pellets to fill a huge automatic feeder. While my new lady friend went to use the bathroom, the slightly larger woman that owned the house showed me photos of her daughter and asked me what I thought of her. I said she was pretty, which wasn't a complete lie. She told me she didn't have a boyfriend, and I nodded and smiled awkwardly. Then she said, "So you're going all the way down to LA with old lady friend, are you?" I saw my chance. Actually, I think it might be better if I get the train. Do you know what the next one is? Slightly large woman checked the train times. Then she hollered out, "Old lady friend, he needs to get the train. The next one's in 20 minutes. Old lady friend rushes, as fast as a 60-year-old can, back into the room, shows no signs of being perturbed, says we better get going then, and we quickly get in the truck. It looks as though we may miss the train. Old lady friend is literally speeding down the road. She turns to me all of a sudden and says, "Has anyone ever told you about Jesus?" I tell her yes, that my parents have told me all about him. That doesn't put her off giving me a little speech, and I don't say anything to stop her. I just smile and thank her. As we get closer to where the station is supposed to be, she winds down her window at some lights and shouts to a surprised dude on the street, "Where's the station?" before accelerating hard and speeding around the bend in the direction the guy pointed to. We get to the station and there's time to spare. There's a bit of a queue at the ticket booth and I say thanks and take my place in line. After a few minutes, I reach the front and buy my ticket. I turn towards the platform and feel a tap on my shoulder. Old lady friend is standing there, apple in hand, a big smile on her face. She presses the apple into my hands and places her hands around mine. She bends her head in prayer. What she said, I can't remember. I was too busy looking at all the people staring at me, an old lady whose head barely reached my chest holding my hands. Amen. Without another word, she walks away. The train arrives, and I leave. I need a movie made about this now. This is such a good story. When I went to Florida, I was stopped by the police for jaywalking. I protested that the road was clear, so therefore safe to cross. He said, "I don't know how you do it in your country, but here in the US, we take road safety seriously." Aghast, I explained I was from England, and my only knowledge of jaywalking was from Lethal Weapon 3, and I believed that it was just a made-up law that they used in the movie to sass people. He chuckled and said, "That's a great movie. I prefer the first." I agreed and said it was by far the best. After a brief chat about the entire Lethal Weapon saga, he said, "In the future, make sure you use the crossings." I agreed, but asked in a pretty decent South African accent, "What if I have diplomatic immunity?" He chuckled, nodded his head, and pointed to the crossing and said, "Cross there, enjoy your vacation." And off he went. It was the highlight of my holiday. I went to Disneyland in Anaheim, and it just struck me that there were a large number of disabled people out and about enjoying the rides. I'm from India, where there is no shortage of disabled people, but it was just the sheer number of disabled people that made me extremely happy that the park was accessible to everyone. "You done good, America," I said to myself as I ate some horrible, expensive fried thing. I later realized that most of those people were not disabled, but fat people on scooters who did not feel like walking. Where do I sign up? According to New Yorkers, my mother and I can't possibly be Portuguese. Apparently, we're Russian, other than incredibly nice and friendly. I loved it. Korean friend who just got off the plane in Atlanta. "So many big fat black women." Yes, he said it loudly and in public. But my favorite was a Japanese fellow who went to a buffet with a group of friends in Vegas. He sits down and his plate looks like a normal little meal. We all have heaps of crap all over ours, and his eyes bug out that we have so much food. I said he's really going to freak out when he realizes this is only our first plate. A couple. I went to university at Cal State Fresno. I was a country boy from Canada. When I was there, the entire downtown of Fresno was boarded up and you did not go there after dark. Actually, anytime. And a full-blown gun/gang fight outside of my apartment, in Clovis, a suburb near the university. For a kid from small-town Canada, that was mind-blowing. When I first moved to America, one of the first things I saw after leaving JFK was a homeless man pleasuring himself outside of Union Station. It wouldn't have been that strange, except I had heard a lot of things about New York City from people who had been there, or knew someone, etc., and I was worried what I was seeing was just going to be an everyday, everywhere thing all throughout the country. I saw 50 chicken nuggets for $5. There was a place called Norma's in Washington State, somewhere rural. Anyway, it was like a shrine to George Bush. The owner was a guy, and the back of the menu had his face with the quote, "Just call me Norma" on the back. Best burger I ever had, called the George W. Bush burger. Not my story, but my mom's. And instead of visiting, it was more like a people who have immigrated to the US, what is your WTF America story? So it's the early 1980s, and my mom's plane touches down in LAX from Tokyo. As she was collecting her luggage and waiting for her friend to pick her up, a Hare Krishna, which she had never seen before, came up to her and asks her, in English, if she could donate a few dollars. My mom, who only had a few yen and a poor grasp of English, tried to explain to the Hare Krishna that she couldn't understand him and that she had just arrived in the United States. The moment she started talking to him in Japanese, he just gave her some of the money he had and went on his merry way, leaving her at the luggage carousel confused as heck. I asked an old lady if it's true all Americans carry guns. She smiled and pulled a revolver out of her purse. She was a nice lady. I was 12 years old when I spent a month in Minnesota. I remember going WTF, or at least a French equivalent, when we went to Mall of America and I saw the freaking roller coaster inside of it. Edit. I'm not Canadian. I come from the old continent. Back home we would say something like, Putain! Yes, it means unfaithful woman. But I wasn't using curse words when I was 12, so I probably shouted, oh la vache, holy cow. Minnesota is awesome when you're 12. Now that I'm all grown up, I'd like to go to LA or New York City, but nothing beats fishing and horseback riding when you're a preteen. Canadian on tour in America witnessed an enormous man at a Big Boy in Wisconsin pull out 5 jumbo freezer bags and fill them to the brim with sausages from the all-you-can-eat buffet. He hid every bag between the overhang of his belly and sweatpants, then filled a full plate of sausages and proceeded to sit calmly at his table and finish them. Canadian was in a gas station waiting to pay before prepaid took over, and a couple of guys with handguns and holsters were in line in front of me, resting their hands on the guns. Not so much WTF, I knew to expect it, but it's a memory I think of often. Edit. I know nothing about guns or the proper terminology, but I have lots of questions about the exact posture in my inbox, so I'll try to clarify without angering more people. It wasn't a threatening, I'm about to draw my gun pose. It was more of a, this is just a comfy resting place for my hands pose. Like when you hook your thumb on your belt and let it hang there, except near your gun. Anyway, my original point wasn't that I thought they were going to draw. I was just shocked seeing a couple of guns like that. It had never happened before. Me paying at a gas station. Attendant hears I have an accent, smiles at me. You speak English so well. Thanks. Although I should do. I'm from England. Cue confused look. Wait, they... She trailed off. Speak English there? Her colleague stared at her in open-mouthed disbelief and then broke out laughing with the other customers. She looked mortified. To be fair, I felt terrible for her. She was only trying to be friendly to a foreigner. I'm from America, and I have a friend from Australia. It amazes him that there are so many flags everywhere. Apparently, that is a distinct USA thing. He'll make jokes about how we all forget where we are. Was in northern New York, near Buffalo, and a waitress overheard that I was headed back to the Pacific Ocean. She asked where I was going, and I said Vancouver. No, honey. Vancouver is in Canada, and that is on the Atlantic Ocean. I said, Canada is from sea to sea, just like America. She replied, no, that's not right. Only America is from sea to sea. The combination of her being absolutely sure about something and her total ignorance was surprising enough, but the fact that she felt she could basically interrupt our conversation by telling me I am wrong about what ocean I live beside was weird. French ex-exchange teenager in Cali here. Summer 97. I was young and missed the field trip bus to Disneyland from San Diego. So I did something pretty stupid. I hitchhiked to go there by myself. Dude who took me looked like a plaincloth cop, but a good buddy. When he heard I was French, he told me to never ever hitchhike in USA because it's pretty dangerous. Plus, people could assume I'm a serial killer. So I boasted, look at you, you don't think I'm a serial killer. I'm not that dangerous looking, or you're a careless. He told me to open the glove box in front of me. There was a supposedly loaded, freaking Desert Eagle inside. He dropped me at the bus station and insisted to give me $10 for a ticket. I had cash, and waited for me to go in the bus. TLDR, still don't know if plaincloth angel or Zodiac killer. Do you have cell phones in Norway? This was in 2012. Kids nowadays get an iPhone and or iPad before they're born. I'm Canadian, and I went down to the US to do a little shopping. I accidentally pulled out some Canadian bills, and the cashier asked why I kept Monopoly money in my wallet. Edit, a lot of people are saying it was just sarcasm. I don't think it was. The cashier looked around 16 years old. She had probably never seen Canadian money before. When I started awkwardly chuckling, she had a puzzled look on her face. But who knows? Maybe she was just really invested in a joke. After moving from Africa as a teen, I am repeatedly asked why I moved to Africa in the first place, to which I replied that I've always lived there. I am also asked, so why are you white? To which I reply, oh my god, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white. However, when they reply with blank stares, I realize they aren't referencing Mean Girls. Some other questions. So, Africa is one country and all the borderlines are, like, states? Are there, buildings? You guys have memes over there, right? Are you Australian? Australian here. I went to Houston last year and spoke to a girl my age in the airport. We got chatting about uni/college. It was around July, and she asked me if I was on my summer vacation. I casually explained I was on my winter break. She was genuinely confused and did not understand how it was summer in the US but winter in Australia. I tried to explain, but eventually gave up. This next one has layers. I was complimented on my excellent English by a girl from Ohio. I'm Canadian. She thought we all spoke German. You know, Canada, the country best known for speaking German. Not that there's already a country whose language is named after the country it originates from. When I started chatting to a cashier, she squealed and asked where I was from. I told her Australia, and she instantly dumbed down how she spoke. Do y'all speak English down there? I replied sporadically. She laughed and informed me that wasn't a word. When I went to the US the first time and ordered a meal from Burger King, ordering a large fry, Coke, and a Whopper, I was blown away by the size of it all. Each item was larger than the same item back home. I was already like WTF, but then the cashier said I could have a second Whopper for $1. Again, I was like, what the heck? Sign me up! Another time, while I was in Daytona, I went to a restaurant and the woman kept refilling my drink again and again. Being a bit shy, I didn't tell her to stop and expected a bill with $15 for sodas, but then I found out the refills were free. What the heck? Free refills? I'd only seen that at places like Subway, but so many restaurants in the US had free refills. I love the US for restaurants and food in general. The portions are massive and very reasonably priced. Went to Walmart. The fabled creatures there are just as the internet portrays them as. Nonetheless, still mind-blowing. With all the Australian replies in this thread, I can only imagine someone dressed like Steve Irwin running around a Walmart, squatting down in front of the average shopper and exclaiming, "Whoa, now there's a beauty! Overweightus Americanus, known for their impulsive spending habits. These babies can grow up to 158 kilos!" How spread out everything is. Like, it's pretty much impossible for me to survive without a car, while everywhere I needed to go on a regular basis back in London was in a 10-minute biking distance. Also, the number of pickup trucks people own without needing. It has come to my attention that the city I live in, Jacksonville, Florida, is the widest city in the 48 contiguous states of the US, with a population of just under 1 million. That explains a lot. Not gonna lie, I personally hate needing a vehicle to navigate a city. Like, what's the point of having everything in one spot if you're just going to have to drive to it anyway? It defeats the purpose entirely. Any contractors or civil engineers willing to answer this question in the comments? Let me know. Not mine, but someone posted a while back about his British boss getting pulled over for speeding. As is the tradition in England, he got out of the car to meet the police officer, and it went about as well as you'd expect. Went to a club the other day and got frisked by a door guy wearing a bulletproof vest. That was interesting. Every single one of you jerks asked me where in England I was from. I'm from Australia! Pretty much as far away from England as you can get without leaving the planet! A universal WTF for both foreign and US citizens? The Golden Corral. Everything was submerged in liquid butter. The patrons were larger than some cars. I'd never been out of Australia before. In Australia, only farmers and cops have guns, and some criminals, I guess. So I had never seen a gun that wasn't in a cop's holster in my entire 30-year existence. We go to the US for our honeymoon and have the honor and privilege of visiting a Walmart. The guns are just on the shelf. You can touch them. A fellow Aussie friend who was with us at the time asked the cashier if she could hold one. He looked at her as if she had asked if it was okay to breathe the store's air. "Can I hold one? This big one?" she asked, incredulous. "Sure, if you want to," the guy said, confused and bored at the same time. She picked up this huge gun. Sorry, not a gun guy. Don't know what it was. It was about the size of a shotgun, but was bulkier, and was getting us to take photos of her with it. If I had a gun like that at home and walked outside my house with it, someone would drive past and see me in about 10 seconds. They would call the cops, which would take about 30 seconds. The police station is just up the road, so I estimate a cop car would arrive in about 3 minutes. And it would take about 10 seconds for a cop to ask me politely to jump in his car and come for a nice chat down to the police station. But It'll be fun for about 4 minutes. That thing is $10. That's good. I have a $10 note. I can buy that thing. Oh, wait. I went to Applebee's. Mistake number 1, I guess. I was then served by a nice young lady called Brittany who asked me with a serious face if we have trees in Scotland. I'm from the UK. Lived in the US for about 5 years now. Few things that annoy me. You want to get a loan for a new car? There's a fee for that, on top of the interest. You want to take money out of the ATM? There's a fee for that. You want to exchange some currency? There's a fee for that, on top of the exchange spread. A product has money off? You'll have to send something to receive it. They hope you can't be bothered. Pretty much any service, someone will try to make a few extra dollars off you. Was in Spokane at Silverwood, amusement park, and asked where the washroom was. I was promptly told there were no washrooms in the park. This happened a good handful of times, and it never even occurred to me that I had to say restroom to receive any real help. I'm Canadian and have visited the United States multiple times, and have had an overall enjoyable experience on each one. I wouldn't blame this on America, but I saw a fat, bald, middle-aged man standing on the side of a Pennsylvania highway with bunny ears. I'm sure this happens in Canada too, but this is the first time I've seen something like this. Easter Bunny has had a rough few years. People just don't care about Jesus coming back anymore.
Men. What's something that would surprise women about life as a man? I'm a guy with kids and a wife who is a nurse that works nights. It's almost impossible for me to go to do stuff with them without someone saying something about daddy duty or mom got a free day today, huh? It's ridiculous. Not every male with a child out there is some deadbeat parent who only hangs out with their kids when they absolutely have to. As a single dad, I can relate. People act like I'm on some extreme adventure of babysitting, when in reality, I'm taking my 2 kids with me grocery shopping. I'm a single dad 24/7, it's my life. No biggie. My ex and I separated 6 weeks ago. Yesterday, I took my 14-month-old daughter to a parent and toddler group, and a woman there asked me if I was babysitting. I was absolutely frickin' livid, but I couldn't and wouldn't let on how I felt. I had to settle for, no, are you? No idea whether she got the message or not, but the look of confusion on her face was nice to see. This sort of post has come up in the past, and overwhelmingly, men say they don't get sincerely complimented often enough, so when it happens, it sticks with them for a long time. I had such an opportunity at the grocery store a week or so ago. A man was walking toward me, and I noticed he had a nice beard, so I decided to tell him I liked his beard. He smiled and touched it and said thank you. I feel like it was a small but good deed, and I hope it sticks with him as the genuine compliment that it was. Bearded guy here. Whenever I got complimented about my beard, mostly by men, a little flower opens up in my heart. We definitely enjoy compliments. I just got out of a 4-year relationship, and during some reminiscing thoughts, I realized she never once told me I looked nice or called me handsome or anything. I told her she was beautiful every day for 4 years, and I don't even know if she found me attractive. I have high self-esteem, which is probably why I didn't notice it was going on until after we broke up. I learned a long time ago that no one is going to love me the way I love me. She was a good girl. I'm sure she didn't realize she was doing it. It sucks. I've been there. We're also the ones that are supposed to initiate doing the deed when we don't even know if our girl is attracted to us. I've never felt the same longing in my life that some of these gentlemen do, but it's definitely a valid one. Positive affirmation is never a bad thing, even if someone doesn't necessarily show how happy it makes them. Some of us are just bad at taking compliments, but they do appreciate them. The biggest turn-on for a guy is if she shows interest in you. That's seriously the number one thing on my list of things that makes women attractive to me. And that's a problem, because I often find myself in relationships that aren't healthy in the long term for me. But holy crap, when a girl shows interest, it's like all the other items on my list of things that are good for me when a partner is concerned go out the window. And I brush off and justify all the things I've literally internalized as bad for me. Like, for instance, a girl who isn't innately curious has no potential for me. And I know this, but if any girl shows interest, it's like, give it another chance. It'll work out this time. It's different because she likes you a lot. Scumbag brain and scumbag pee-pee collude on a lot of this stuff. It's stuff like this that gets me some of the most. Constantly being the one who had to take the risk, put their foot forward first, take charge first. It's exhausting. Like, sometimes, couldn't you just decide where to go? Couldn't you sometimes initiate intimate moments? Couldn't you sometimes message me first? I finally found the girl who I think I match with damn near perfectly, but the communication is such a huge issue. It's exhausting, and if we don't fix it, this will stagnate, and I'll never feel like it's right. But she is an attractive girl in a world where her social media posts gets all of the attention, and as far as I can tell, all of her conversations are initiated by her friends. I don't think she understands what it's like on this end. She has a huge network of people interested in her. I'm just an average Joe with a few good friends and some acquaintances I'm friends with. We pretty much go through life unnoticed, save for negative attention. I've been going to a pet supply store for about a decade, and although I'm always greeted nicely, I'm generally left alone. I walked in with a baby in a carrier one day, and I was greeted by everyone, and every single employee went out of their way to ask me what I was getting and if they could get it for me. I was fully capable of getting a 30-pound bag of dog food and the baby, but one employee simply wasn't having it. He ran back to grab the food and carried it to the checkout and then carried it to the car. I was shocked. I told my wife about it and she said, "They do that every time you go there, don't they?" Apparently, this is the customer service she receives every single time she goes there, or pretty much anywhere with decent customer service. She was shocked to hear that I didn't receive the same service. Me too. I love taking my 8-year-old daughter shopping because everyone is so nice and smiles at us. I'm a big scary guy, 6'4", 280 pounds, so no one smiles at me when I'm alone. 1. How much we would like to feel wanted and not simply useful or needed. 2. How much pressure there is on us in terms of body image. We hear about all the crap women go through, but do you ever stop to think about all the eggplant-sized jokes? That alone can cause insecurity, and that doesn't even touch things like losing your hair, graying, muscle mass, etc. That we really do care a lot more than society says we do. We're just not allowed to show it because that's a sign of weakness, and we're taught at a young age that you have to put up a perfect image or no one will ever want you. The first point hits home for me. Sometimes I confide in my wife that I don't feel wanted, and she gives me a crooked look. She goes on to explain all the reasons I'm useful and needed in the household, but never expresses how or why I'm wanted. I like kids. Kids are funny, they like breaking rules to have fun, and they still have an imagination. I don't screw kids. Hell, I hardly screw adults either, but that's beside the point. A girl I went on a date with last week showed me a picture of this adorable little boy, her neighbor's son, and told me she sometimes goes to her neighbor's house just to see him. When I told her that I didn't think that would ever be the case for me, she seemed sad and asked why. I'm a guy. Hello, Susan. It would make my night if I could take your goofy 6-year-old daughter out for ice cream. I've had a very depressing day. You can F off before I call the police. How's that? That works too. Have a nice night. See you never. It's the same for me. I always tickle-thought my children, and we're totally goofy. I just love children. They're clever and funny, cute, and have awesome imaginations. But no matter how cute somebody else's child is, I would never want to be alone with them or get into a tickle fight. You know, I almost put "touch them" on the last sentence, but in my mind I thought, oh man, that would be bad. When in my brain I was thinking, picking up a 2-year-old and saying hi to them. Society is sick. I volunteer at an after-school program. Every so often one of the kids, maybe 12 to 15 years old, will see me on the bus, run over and talk to me. And I'll feel the eyes of every single woman on the bus, making sure everything is cool there. I've had more than one woman ask, "Is he bothering you, honey?" Or switch seats so that they have a clearer view. I'm a clean-looking 34-year-old dude in a suit. That would never happen to a woman, and it's kinda sad. It's interesting, isn't it? Even as a guy who's worked with kids, I feel like I would make the same assumptions about seeing these guys do this, and I don't see how to change it on a societal level. Men have just as hard a time overcoming stereotypes as women. You, a woman, want to learn how to ride a motorcycle or want to be a programmer, and you don't want to be a housewife or spend all day cooking? Good for you! You, a man, don't want to cut the grass or learn to fix your car by yourself, and you want to spend all day cleaning the house and sewing pillowcases? Wake the F up and support your family. I get dirty looks anytime I mention that my wife does the mowing and most of the raking, like I've failed as a husband. If anything, I've won as a husband. I've got a wife that loves me enough to do the hard, annoying work because she knows my allergies will knock me on my butt. Same with cooking. Oh, giving the wife a night off, eh? Hell no. I cook every night. She knows I hate doing the dishes, so we made a deal. Man, this angry rant made me feel good about my wife. Haha. The book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg actually described this pretty well. She said life as a man or woman is like running a marathon. With women, people from the sidelines are saying, "You can quit whenever you want, it'll be okay," which signified lower expectations professionally. Whereas men, people from the sidelines are saying, "You can do it, just finish," which signified people telling men to stay and keep going regardless, even if that's not ultimately what they wanted. It's hard not to want to disappoint or be judged by others. That metaphor really resonated with me, because the pressure is pretty real on both sides for these really real reasons. My ex fell into a trap of unrealistic expectations. She told me outright that she couldn't stand the fact that I didn't know what she was thinking without her telling me. Do I look like a freaking mind reader? I'm not completely awful at taking subtle hints, but I'm only human. If you tell me you need to go to a certain store to pick up a certain thing, and you say it in passing and never bring it up again, how can you possibly be mad at me a week later for not having taken you to said store? Take yourself to the store. Wait for Christmas and I'll buy you that coat, because I'm not that clueless and I will remember. Married almost 5 years. Made a separate Etsy/Amazon account for the husband. I go on there and make wish lists and never check the order history. Helped tremendously. One year I told him I need panties. I got 47 pairs for Christmas and nothing else. Dish towels for my birthday. Yeah. Wish lists save marriages. I remember my wife asked me years ago, "Hey, get any compliments on your bald head?" It was a drastic change, shaved head. She thought it fit my style. At the time, I only worked with guys. She looked amazed and shocked when I laughingly replied, "Are you serious?" I doubt anyone noticed. She thought I was heartbroken, but in reality, I would have been surprised if anyone did compliment. It's very rare to find a company or place of work that allows men to follow a seasonal dress code. It's really hot in the summer? Women can wear dresses or skirts, men are still wearing suits. It would be nice to be able to wear a nice pair of shorts if it's really hot out. The company where I used to work allowed men to take off their ties if it was over 90 degrees in the office. Can't get more accommodating than that. Haven't seen this one yet. My girlfriend was absolutely bamboozled by the fact that our family jewels can be raised or lowered by flexing. I mean, she was speechless for a good 3 minutes. Just to clarify, it's the cremaster muscle. Imagine you are trying to cut a pea short, now hold that flexed muscle. This works best when it's hot out and balls are hanging low. You will see the jewels move upward all the way to the base of your girthy manhood. Wait, what? Be right back. It's been 2 hours. For God's sake, man, are you all right? He may have overclenched. Get the tongs! From my experience, women talk about the act of doing the deed with their friends much more and in much more graphic detail than men talk about the same subject with their guy friends. I guess my point is that men aren't as sleazy or gratuitous as most women make us out to be. Conversations with me and my dudes about doing the deed? Friend 1. So how did things work out with her? Me. Oh yeah. Grins slightly. Dude. Nods in satisfaction. That's literally all there is to it. I mean, some men are still way too into trying to talk about the details of their encounters in the most graphic and disrespectful way possible, but my first man here is right in that they are in the minority. The complete and total lack of regard or value for our own lives, both internally and all too often externally. I don't mean to pick fights here, but when you hear about women and children first, men must register for the military draft, etc., it gets ingrained into you. You learn slowly but surely that your value is contingent upon what you do and not just who you are. You never feel truly satisfied just being there, just existing. You always feel like you have to constantly be working at something. And God forbid you ever become unemployed. Then you're essentially invisible. A homeless woman is often seen as more of a pity or someone to be sympathetic to. She must have been abused, had the unspeakable acts committed against her, etc. A homeless man? He's seen as a threat. He's seen as an outcast. There's little sympathy, even though, oftentimes, he may have gone through those exact same issues as the woman. It often feels like, on a certain level, society tends to see any problem that women have as being externally caused, whereas men's issues are often seen as his own failures or doings, etc. Men's problems are seen as being internally caused. Men are seen as having more control, which can be beneficial if you're wanting to be in a position of esteem and power, but it can also be harmful if you're struggling with mental illness or just to make ends meet. And that's why, I think, we so often refuse to seek help. We don't want to admit that a problem might be there, because we're afraid it'll turn into an indictment of ourselves, and no one will sit there and say, "It's not your fault, you're good enough, you're valuable just as a human being." Because I've never felt that a man's life is seen as unconditionally valuable. It's valued so often based mostly on what he does, or failing that, doesn't do. Women and children, by contrast, are valued just by being. It's a bitter pill to swallow once you grow up and become a man. You still remember being valued, but it's just not there anymore. You're supposed to have all this control, but you don't. Eventually, that pill all too often becomes literal. That's why we turn to green herb, doing the deed, video games, painkillers, adult flicks, the internet, social media, alcohol, smack, wherever we can escape to and pretend that we have control through or value in. We're taught from a young age that things don't happen to you, they happen because of you. You got a raise at work? Clearly you're a hard worker. Have a wife? Obviously you wooed her correctly. Got divorced? You messed up. She just fell out of love with you? You should have fought harder for her. You're depressed? You need to suck it up. It's so lonely. Hugely important issue. Everyone, and in my opinion, especially men, should read this recent article on loneliness from the New York Times. Now, I've noticed a couple of things that relate to this issue. First of all, I've observed men form deep friendships and relationships generally, through shared experience much more than talk. It simply doesn't feel like support if you're just talking to me about me unless we've seen some crap together, which is a key difference for women. I've observed women mostly feel the support of strangers, which does not happen for men. The void that is male loneliness can be filled by camaraderie of joint work on a project, of following a team, or scientific, political, business venture for us nerds, all together, and of discussions or arguments that may seem idiotic or too distant to be the true issue. At this point, I'm mostly just talking out of my butt, but I remember that convincing men to talk about personal issues is usually like convincing a wall to talk. Instead, take me out to a movie, to a diner for a milkshake and a silver cup. Go to the fricking gym or to a cooking shop or craft class. Second, I want to talk about older men for a second with regards to loneliness. If the things I've said above apply to us 20-somethings, they apply tenfold to the generations before. Many older men have lost some or all of the friends that shared their experiences. To cancer, murder, time, etc. These friends are gone, and it is, or seems nearly impossible, to form a comparable replacement. So older men don't even try. They may form surface friendships at the bar, but as I said, that's hardly going to scratch the itch of loneliness. It might keep them going, but so many older men just look and act like husks of their former selves because they no longer have friends. This issue is huge. Interesting thoughts. Here in Australia, we have this phenomenon called a man shed to help older men deal with loneliness. It's usually run by a local community and provides usually older men with a place to work on projects in a social setting. It's been quite effective in preventing and treating depression, from what I understand. Also, picking up hobbies like amateur astronomy, etc. can be a conduit to forming more meaningful friendships. A lot of my guy friends are simultaneously very lonely and seem very intimidated by the prospect of even trying new things. Initiatives like the Shed idea are great, as are trying out adult classes for something you've been curious about for a long time. I think most women would be surprised to learn that our pee doesn't always come out in a nice, steady, straight stream. My wife still assumes I have no aim because of the times where it may be coming out in more of a splash manner, or the stream is just completely directed haywire. Does anybody else get splash on their shins? It's really gross when I'm wearing shorts. Gross when you feel it on your shins, but for me it's worse realizing after it also happens when you wear jeans, but you just don't feel it. You have to be scared of kids. For example, one time I was in the supermarket and a little kid came up and told me he was lost. But because people jump to call men kitty diddlers here in the US, instead of walking the kid to the front or trying to help him find his mum and dad, I had to tell him to stand there and not move, and I went to the front and got an employee. Now here's the craziest thing. The first employee I found was male, and his response was, "Hang on, it's store policy that male employees don't handle these situations." So he had to go and get a female employee who then helped the kid out. I asked the guy after why that was the policy, even though I kind of knew the answer, and he explained to me that it's happened just before in this store alone, where a male employee had gone to comfort a crying kid or help them find their parents, and either the parents or a stranger had accused them of trying to kidnap them. So if you haven't thought about this before, there you go. Now if you see a guy walking past a kid who's lost, you know why they might have just walked past them. It's not a lack of wanting to help, it's the intense fear of being falsely labeled something. Well, here's a few. Number 1, how much crap we give each other as banter from a young age. Borderline bullying at times, but it's definitely helped us to man up. Number 2, not every guy is a handyman. Number 3, body issues affect us greatly. It's overlooked as we don't often share it, as we generally don't have the same level of emotional support that women provide each other. 4, most common advice we have is to just deal with it. How awkward it is to cry or be emotional in front of other people, even in situations where it would be normal, such as funerals. Usually bottle that stuff up and save it for when you're alone, and then let it out so no one sees. When my dog died, I went with my family and girlfriend at the time. I was 20. After they put him down, I went out of the room and cried in my girlfriend's arms. I apologized heavily for it over and over. Even when talking about it with a friend later, I tried to downplay the crying and he told me, What do you expect? For me to tell you to F you for crying, you sissy B-word? Your goddamn dog died. Of course you cried. Probably the first intimate initial moment I had with my now husband was when we first started dating. His grandfather died. Husband's ex-girlfriend showed up to his grandpa's funeral, and they ended up doing the deed. He was so messed up over it. I called him later to ask how he was doing, and he told me all of it and lost it crying. I drove over and comforted him, but the fact that he trusted me enough to tell me what happened and to cry in front of me really stuck with me. He kept apologizing. I'm not sure if it was over doing the deed with his ex or crying, but I was like, holy crap, you have nothing to apologize about. We hadn't decided to be exclusive at that point, and told him I still cry about my mum from time to time, and that's okay. It's so incredibly messed up the way society expects men to downplay or deny their own grief or sadness. Tears are a testament to the depth of a relationship or connection. It's total bullcrap that they're not okay to shed. How much stress a man can undergo without a mental breakdown. My wife stays at home with the kids and I work 65 hours a week so we can live in the suburbs. She has no idea how hard it can be to say no to her or the kids because money is tight. It breaks my heart sometimes to not be able to give them everything they desire. My wife could never understand how tough that can be on me. Feeling like I'm not doing enough or not man enough to provide. Tough crap. Life as a dad and a man. Sole breadwinner. It can be tough mentally and physically. My wife works hard. She takes care of our kids and our house. She also pays the bills. But I'm so tired. Always.
What's your most accidental, awesome moment? So, in my first years in high school, there was this bully that always picked on me, pushing me around, swearing, and other bullying stuff. Me being the bespectacled little geek and him being taller and bulkier, I just tried to get out of his way and avoid him. So in our second year, our school went for a field trip in some village/farm area. As soon as we were far from teachers, this bully shows up, pushes me around, and hits me. I was fuming because he spoiled my trip, but didn't do anything and he left. A few hours later, I was having lunch up on a small hill that was overlooking a small amateur soccer field. And there was the bully, back to me, 20 meters away, playing as goalkeeper. Geek rage flares up. I have this apple with me, so I pick it up and throw it with all my might towards him. It hit him, straight on the shoulder blade. Now my added height and distance must have added to the force of impact because he got knocked down hard. He lay there for a good 5 minutes, got up, turned around, looked at me, and started walking slowly towards me. I was thinking, oh crap, he's gonna kill me. But I had the geek rage still flaring, so I stood defiantly and waited, ready to fight back this time. He reaches me and goes, "What was that?" "An apple." Listen, man, I don't want any trouble. I was dumbfounded. He never bothered me again after that, even became a bit friendly. TLDR, I neutralized a bully with geek rage and an apple. I was sitting on a patio with friends, and a friend who was absolutely terrified of roaches started screaming and running around because a roach appeared on the top of the patio about 25 feet away from me. As a joke, I casually stood up, whipped out my pocket knife, and while talking, I threw it. It went spinning through the air and stuck the roach to the wood. I sat back down and finished what I was saying while everyone was in disbelief. We all had a good laugh, and they nicknamed me Crocodile Dundee. I catch rattlesnakes for a living in Phoenix, Arizona as an emergency response service for people who find a snake in their yard. Most calls are diamondbacks, but 1 in 4 or so, quote, rattlesnakes end up being a large constrictor called a gopher snake. Gopher snakes can be aggressive, but they're otherwise harmless. On one call, there was a kid of about 15 who was absolutely terrified of a rattlesnake he saw along the back wall of his yard, behind the swimming pool. The only way to really get there was to tightrope it across the narrow ledge of the pool. I got there and saw that it wasn't a rattlesnake at all, but a harmless gopher snake. So I reached down and grabbed the 5-foot snake. It was a jerk about the whole thing, striking at my face repeatedly and getting me on the forearm. I grabbed it closer to the head and wrestled it into control as I made my way back across the ledge to the bucket, where I unwrapped him from my arm and body and put it in the bucket. I then realized I forgot to tell the kid that it wasn't a rattlesnake before doing that. I looked up and he looked like he was going to vomit/pass out. Probably the palest I've ever seen a living person. He surely believed he was about to see a man die. I now routinely, quote, forget to tell homeowners that it's just a gopher snake. About 15 years ago, my ex-wife and I were at a party sitting across from each other at a fairly large table. We were surrounded by dozens of friends. Some sitting, some standing and chatting in the kitchen. She had my Zippo and I wanted to smoke, so I asked her to toss it to me. She tossed the Zippo to me across the table. The lid pops open in midair. Somehow, I hit the roller with my thumb as I catch it, and the thing lights up as it hits my hand. My arm is fully outstretched when I catch it, so I smoothly pulled my arm in, lit the cigarette in my mouth, snapped the Zippo shut with the flick of my wrist, and tossed it back to her with one fluid motion. Half the people at the table jump up in amazement and begged us over and over again to perform the trick one more time. We refused. I never told a soul that the whole event was completely accidental. My friends still talk about it with awe. Not nearly as awesome as yours. I was with my girlfriend at a party and she had this crazy look in her eye from across the table. I could tell she was going to spit a Skittle at me. I didn't know how I knew. She launched it across the long table and I caught it in my mouth. Nobody noticed. For this next one, as I describe this, I just want you to imagine Ave Maria playing in your head. I was at a college football game for MSU in Missouri. I was up in the nosebleeds after our marching band had played in the homecoming parade earlier that day. I left to go get concessions and started walking down the stairs. I tripped suddenly and began tumbling over and over, down, down, down. Over stairs, across landings, flailing hopelessly for purchase on one of the handrails or an onlooker's appendage, but with no avail. It seemed to never end. I eventually reached the bottom, where the landing divided left and right to lead the mezzanine, which meant there was a bit of concrete and a handrail directly in front of me. I hit the handrail with my lower back, almost fully upside down, and still locked in the kinetic tour de force of my fall. I rocked over the handrail with my lumbar as my fulcrum, dropped the meter or so to the ground, and landed feet first in such a state of confusion that I just started walking as if nothing had happened. The whole section erupted in cheers, to the point it made people on the field look up at us. TLDR, I took an epic fall down a crap ton of stairs in front of thousands, landed on my feet, and everyone thought it was on purpose. When I was about 11 years old, I got chased by two vicious, hungry-looking Dobermans in a car yard. Realized I wasn't going to get away, so I turned around, put my war face on, and bolted straight at them, shouting like I was possessed and intending to tear their freaking snouts off. Dogs disappeared with their tails between their legs. I felt like a big man. Now let me see your war face! Ah! I worked at a Boy Scout camp years and years ago. One of the activities I was in charge of was building a log cabin. Part of building the log cabin is to strip all the bark off the wood to help keep the logs from rotting. The Scouts generally had a love-hate relationship with this step of the project. On the plus side, they got to use sharp objects. On the minus side, it was hard manual labor. While they were using bark strippers, I was using a chisel to get the bark off around knots. Normally, using a chisel on wood is not a hazardous operation as long as the blade is facing away from you. One day, I was not doing well on my safety observance. I was trying to jam a stubborn piece of bark off the wood with the blade facing toward my arm. The wood broke against the force. The blade kept on trucking through the bark and into my wrist. At this point, the Scouts knew something was wrong as they saw me curse, drop the chisel, and grab my arm. I was the only adult present, so I was fighting to keep my calm as to not panic the Scouts. My solution was to turn it into a first aid lesson. I told a couple of Scouts to get the first aid kit and the others to help me over the picnic bench. I told them they were going to have an impromptu first aid lesson on severe bleeding and shock with the victim as their instructor. The Scouts were able to keep their heads together and get the health officer out to our location to treat me the rest of the way. They said it was the best first aid class they ever had. Oh, maybe junior year of high school. I used to stay after school to avoid going home. Some girl 1 year below me came up to me with her friends, acting flirty. Her girlfriend and 3 guys walked away. I did not think much of it at the time. Fast forward about 30 minutes, and the girl that I was talking to said that she was worried about her friend and why she was still gone. She said that her friend went in the auditorium and asked if I would see if she is still there. I walk into the auditorium and all the lights are off except for the band pit. I make my way down there and hear a girl say, "No, let go." I flipped a bit and mustered up a yell while charging the band pit. 3 guys take off, followed by the girls. About a month later, My dean walks into my classroom and says that she needs to escort me to the principal's office. Mind you, my school was huge, so while walking to the other building where the principal's office was located, I asked if this was about my skipping gym class a bunch of times. She said no, but whatever it was about must be really big to warrant her escorting me to the principal. We get to the office and I see 2 cops and the 2 girls that I met a month before. Freaking the heck out, I sit down and the cops say, "Thank you." What? I was asked some questions and was informed that the 3 guys were attempting to force themselves upon the girl. I guess I stumbled in at the right time. I had not spoken to my father for months at this time in my life, but received a call from him that night. The school called to tell him what I had done. My pops told me I was his hero. That was a good day. Once in middle school, my locker was next to some hot chicks. I noticed one of her books started slipping from the top shelf, so I put my hand out to stop it. It started actually falling, so I was like, crap, and awkwardly tried to stop it. It landed perfectly in my hand. The binding went straight into my palm, without me even looking, and I ninja'd it right back into the shelf. I was Peter Parker for 30 seconds. I was going to college in Chicago and left a bar near Wrigley Field with a beer bottle in my hand. While walking to the L, 2 guys confront me on the street wanting to rob me. I was stunned and accidentally hit the bottle on a brick building, shattering the bottom. The 2 guys thought I was going to defend myself with the broken bottle and ran. Stopped to get gas at an old country store gas station outside Camden, South Carolina. Apparently, one of the door hinges was broken, so when I opened the door, the entire door came off in my hands. There were 5 or 6 farmers, truckers in line at the cashier. One of the fellas said, "Dang, I'd feel pretty good for the rest of the day if I were you." Here's another story. When I was in grade 10, I had this real jerk of a computer science teacher. Like, the type that would rather make fun or condescend you to make himself feel better or something instead of helping you. One day, we were making programs to output certain properties of a sphere/circle after inputting a radius value. I remember asking him what's the surface area of a sphere or something to that effect. I mean, I don't think that was an unreasonable question. I'm in frickin' 10th grade for frick's sake. He decided to take this opportunity to humiliate me. So anyway, this is how the convo went. The surface area of a sphere is 4 pi r squared, right, sir? Did you just ask me the surface area of a sphere? Yeah? Well, maybe we should call your math teacher and find out. Walks over to phone, dials math teacher. Hey, your student X would like to ask you a question. I walk over to phone with everyone in class watching me. Yeah, Mr. Computer Science teacher doesn't know the surface area of a sphere, and he's too embarrassed to ask you himself. His face turned super red and the whole class cracked up. I felt so epic that week. Me and my then 3-year-old son went to the playground. This bigger kid arrived and started going around scaring the crap out of the smaller kids by popping out and roaring and hissing and whatnot right in their face. I saw what car came in and that his mom was sitting in it still. Maybe just waiting for him to finish quote-unquote playing. Anyway, he proceeds to do his scare thing to my son, who of course freaks out and runs to me crying. I started fuming, thinking it's his own parents' responsibility to tell him to cut that crap out. I decided to go tell his mom. I ask, "Is that your son over there?" She says yes, and I tell her what he's doing, and either you get him to stop or I'll do it for you. To my surprise, she says, "Oh, please do. I can't control him today." So I go back over and try my best to hide right where he is roaming. And as soon as he's within striking distance, I pop out, and with all the air in my lungs, I scream at the top of my lungs 1 inch from his face. He ran back to his car, absolutely terrified and crying. I could see his mom. She didn't come out or do a thing. To this day, if anyone messes with my son who's bigger than him, he screams nonsensically in their face. Crazy beats size any day. Was in a restaurant with my girlfriend at the time, and when a guy built like a refrigerator just comes barging through and knocks my girlfriend's drink all over her. Sorry, real quick, I just need to mention that I could not tell you how many times I cracked up over the phrase built like a refrigerator. Like, that's such a specific thing to say, and it just murdered me every time I tried to read it. It was clearly an accident based on his refrigerator-like physique and being unable to hold his arms at his side. At this point, I'm standing up to help clean her up and figure he's going to apologize or something. Instead, he pushes my shoulder and tells me to get out of the way and, quote, let the dog clean herself up. I stare at him and say, "That dog is my girlfriend. You dang well better apologize to her." So the woman and man at the table next to us are notably getting nervous. She drops her menu off the table. By some fluke, I catch the menu flat along the top of my foot before it hits the ground and proceed to just raise my foot, keeping the menu on top of it. I grab the menu into my hand, all the while glaring into this guy's eyes. I just tell her, "Sorry, ma'am, you seem to have dropped this." I just look at him and say, "So, I think we left it off where you were going to apologize to my girlfriend for being so rude and then walking around." Much to my surprise, he turned to my girlfriend and said, "I'm terribly sorry," and then turned around and walked away. Our check was taken care of as well. I've caught light things like pieces of paper on top of my foot, but never something like a menu. And I was always terrible at hacky sack. I was 19 and at a house party near the university in my hometown. It was winter and my girlfriend and I were wearing scarves she had just knitted. They were her first knitting projects and she was super proud of them. I was super proud too. Anyway, there were a group of snarky jocks sitting on the steps and on the railing of the porch. We were returning from a beer run and as I approached the door, one of the jocks on the railing says to me, "Nice scarf, gay boy," and all his buddies laugh. I stood there with the door in my hand for a second and looked at my visibly hurt girlfriend. It made me furious that he mocked her amazing creation and gift, so I slammed the door and started towards them to tell them how actually freaking awesome my scarf was. He must have thought I was in fight mode because he flinched, lost balance, tried to correct himself, and comically fell backwards off the porch to the delight of both his and my friends. I opened the door for my beaming girlfriend and we went inside. Best part is, no one knew all I was going to do was get all sentimental on his butt and open up a can of polite confrontation all over him. TLDR, guy smack-talked my woman's yarn crafts and now he's on his back. TLDR, accidental front flip on a snowboard. I'm a little late to the game, but here it goes. I used to work at a ski resort in Pennsylvania, so I'd be out riding in all kinds of crazy conditions. One particular day, the snow was really granulated to the point where you could get stuck in it. I was riding down a steep slope going quite fast and hit a pile of granulated snow that almost brought me to a complete stop. My reflexes told me to lean forward and tuck, so instead of a devastating fall, I was picked up off the ground by my momentum and did a front flip on my board, landing perfectly and riding away. I think one or two other instructors saw it. I was about 17 when I was walking with my younger brother and two of his friends. They were all about 12. A car, full of people, passes and yells at us and flips us off. I knew who it was, so I flipped them off and yelled, "Screw you!" back at them. We continued along and cut through an empty parking lot enclosed by trees to take a shortcut to our destination. The car I flipped off comes flying into the parking lot, people screaming, tires squealing. My little brother and his friends are scared crapless. I walk over to the car laughing because of the way the younger kids with me were acting, and was going to give my friends in the car a good laugh. When I get to the car, I stick my head dang near in the driver's window, still laughing, and realized I had no idea who any of these people were. My laughing face turned to a morbid, "I'm about to get my butt kicked" face, which the people in the car must have interpreted as maniacal laughter turning into a death stare. It scared the crap out of them, and I recall hearing passengers screaming at the driver to get the heck out of there. "He's going to kill us!" The car peeled away, and I walked back to rejoin my brother and his friends, and they all thought I was the coolest, most awesome older teen they'd ever met. About 5 years ago, there was a crazy huge bee in my house, and my brother, terrified of bees, came running to me, wanting me to kill it for him. I picked up my crappy toy airsoft pistol, which was loaded with one pellet, pointed the pistol at the bee from about 40 feet away, didn't aim at all, pulled the trigger, and saw a splat on the other side of the room. TLDR, unassisted triple play. I hate baseball. No offense. My mom made me play in the park league a few seasons anyways. So I was at second base in a coach pitch game, about 8 years old, when the batter hit a ball that would have passed right by me at shoulder level. I just casually stuck on my glove and to my surprise caught the ball. I was already stepping on the base, so the runner heading towards third was instantly out. By this time, the runner from first was approaching. "Tag him!" my coach was screaming frantically. So I reached out and tapped the runner from first. I remember everyone, especially the coach, going wild. They even dated the ball and gave it to me. I didn't realize until years later how rare an unassisted triple play is. This happened in my skydiving years. It was a Saturday morning. There was a group of girls from the nearby college wanting to jump, so the daring, including myself, wanted to do a hop and pop to show the girls what skydiving looks like. We get to altitude, jump, deploy our chutes, and start to show off our crazy canopy skills. I decide that I'll do a hook turn. They look cool from the ground, and my canopy colors were blue and pink. Well, after some tugs on my toggles, my hook turn collapses my canopy. It turns into a low hook turn. Low hook turns usually end up with a visit to the hospital or the morgue, usually the latter. With my canopy folded over, I'm doing revolutions. My altitude is too low to cut away and use my reserve, so I think to myself that, this is it. I hope this doesn't hurt too bad. I hope I can walk away. On the bright side, my lines didn't wrap around the canopy, so there is a possibility that I could pull it out before impact. From the people on the ground, all they saw were some skydivers coming in for a landing, swinging like a pendulum, and some of them coming in to kick this inflatable target we had at our DZ. They could tell that something wasn't right with one of the divers, me, because his chute wasn't open and he was spinning parallel to the ground. The most important thing to do in skydiving is to make everything you do look cool. With 100 feet to go before impact, I pump my toggles, release, and my canopy unfurls and inflates as if the hands of God raked his fingers through my lines and pulled my canopy tight. This put my body position perpendicular with no inches to spare for a walk-in landing. The crowd applauds with oohs and ahs, including the experienced divers who knew what was happening. I bow, gather my stuff, and go in the clubhouse to calm my nerves. My buddies told the students he does that all the time, and they knew I was shaken. I met my old dive buddies a few months ago. We live in different states now, and they brought up that experience as one of the craziest things they have ever seen.
What's the best question someone asked in life skills class? During student teaching, I heard a question a kid had asked. The kid raised his hand and asked, "So, if the mom were to have chest cancer, would her milk still be safe for the baby to drink?" The teacher thought it was a very out-of-the-box question, but unique, and praised the kid for thinking of it. I think they said their response was something along the lines of, "The mom probably wouldn't be in any shape to breastfeed." So the kid says, "Oh, okay, so could the baby still drink milk out of the dad's pee-pee?" The teacher had to turn around to avoid losing it in front of the kid. If you came on a table, would it move?" He was trying to ask if the sperm moved around in the seminal fluid, but had some poor choice of words. Wait, that's not how you check for mimics? "If I keep letting him pee on me, will I get pregnant?" Best day of my entire schooling career ever. When I was in 6th grade, we had something called FLE, I think it stood for Family Life Education or something, that was pretty much just a life skills class. It wasn't co-ed, so all of us, 11 and 12-year-old guys, were being taught by a homeroom teacher and the computer teacher. They gave us index cards to write questions down, and someone asked, "How do whales do the deed?" The teachers thought it was funny, but they didn't answer, and after a few minutes, I guess someone asked again because comp teacher asks, "Okay, what's up with you guys and whales?" I mean, now I kinda wanna know what's up with whales. In a certain species of whale, a friend prevents them from sinking by letting them do the deed on his back. Our viewers should have now realized that when I'm saying life skills, the word I'm swapping out is SEX education, so the video doesn't get demonetized. There are, however, a lot of other words that I'm swapping out as well, obviously. I went to a private religious university that did a yearly life skills talk where the folks could submit questions about a week beforehand, and then have them answered anonymously at the talk. Best one was when the doctor leading the talk, scrolling through his list of questions, reads, "What is pubic hair for?" Pauses for a sec and says, "I have no idea," and just keeps scrolling on to the next one. Made me chuckle anyway. I did ask that question in life skills once, and I was laughed at by the class, and the teacher also did a, "I don't know," and moved on. I too have been waiting for an answer for over 20 years. I always assumed it was a protective cushion, just like the hair on your head. Hair on the head protects a little bit from bonks and falls. The hair on your bits protects them when you're smashing them together. So the teacher told us wearing 2 rubbers is actually less effective because of the increased friction, and a top mind in my class asked, "If you go fast enough, could you start a fire?" Asking the really important questions. A kid in 5th grade asked what the flavors on rubbers are for, while trying to stifle his laughter. The teacher responded with, "Use your best judgment." Can you get an STD if a guy splooges in your ear? Cue the rest of the class slowly turning their heads to look at this girl. You can develop hearing aids! Ha 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 ha! When a teacher was explaining that you could in fact get STDs from oral fun times, a girl in my grade asked, "How can you catch an STD over the phone?" Solid question, I thought. Fun fact, telephone area codes in the UK use STD, subscriber trunk dialing, for long-distance calls, so in the 1960s and 70s, it was new and exciting to have a phone with STD. The teacher told us the average size of male anatomy. Girl beside me whips out a ruler, marks it, and proclaims, "That's tiny!" She then proceeded to ask if the balls slide in too, followed by a hand motion and a sound. Had us all in stitches. There was a girl I was friends with in high school that was pretty fun, but known as a more, well, intimate person. She was dating a 26-year-old when she was like 16, stuff like that. When I took life skills class with her, the best gem of a conversation with our teacher went something like this. She said, "You know how when guys climax before the splooge comes out? There's a pre-splooge. Teacher, yes, why? Can this pre-splooge get someone pregnant? Yes, there can still be sperm cells present. Well, that sure sucks. Can I please be excused?" She texted me later and told me she wasn't pregnant, thank God, but the timing of it was like a sitcom. Does peanut butter make your chest grow bigger? This was asked by one of the most popular girls in the 5th grade. I mean, if you eat lots and it makes you fat, you get a bigger chest, right? We had an anonymous question box where students could ask questions they were too embarrassed to raise their hands and ask. A lot of times people would just write joke questions, but the teacher would read them anyway. One day the teacher reads the question, "Is it better to pleasure yourself with your left or your right pee-pee?" A kid in the back audibly says, "You're supposed to have two?" and immediately starts crying. I'm a little concerned because these sorts of classes usually take place in their teens. If that kid was that unsure of such an extreme fact of human anatomy, I'm worried. Here's one more chat from the anonymous questions box. If semen comes out at 30 miles per hour, how fast does a baby come out? Dear God, the anonymous question box was great in my high school. My second child came out close to that speed. Doctor almost didn't catch her. We had a box where people could write a question they were too embarrassed to ask, and someone would read them aloud for the teacher to answer. The best one was, "If I'm doing a girl in the butt and she farts, will my balls explode?" And the answer was... After she finally got the room of 15-year-olds to stop laughing, she informed us that no, it will cause him no harm. One of the 5th graders asked, "Does adult fun times feel good?" Poor teacher had no idea how to answer that. My dad asked that to his parents after they gave him and his brother a book about doing the deed. Apparently, my grandfather had to explain straight-faced that if it wasn't good, then no one would be doing it. A story from my friend's 5th grade life skills class, someone asked the male teacher what the climax felt like, and after consideration he said, "Like a sneeze, but good." I've always felt like that was a solid description. What's going to happen with all of these cucumbers after class? Girl drawing male anatomy on the whiteboard and then asks herself quietly, but loud enough for people to hear, "Are the balls in front of the pee-pee or behind?" I remember when the abstinence-only crew came to our class and presented their spiel about how life is so much better if you wait until marriage, and all that, then presented an opportunity to ask a question anonymously by dropping your question in a box. One kid asked how deep the butthole goes. Some kid asked what doing it in the ear was. The teacher squinted at him and went, "What?" Depending on when this was, the kid probably saw the Family Guy episode about that and assumed it was the real thing. Our teacher was telling us the different methods of pregnancy and STD prevention, and he said that the only way to 100% prevent both is abstinence. A guy said, "Where can you buy an abstinence?" Kid, "Why do people bounce up and down when they do the deed?" Teacher, very casually, "I don't know, I guess they just think it feels better that way." Well, frick, that's one professional teacher. There's no way I would have been able to keep a straight face. Just imagine, a man with his eggplant and some lady and they're just not moving, just lying on top of each other, keeping silent, and awkward eye contact the entire time. In middle school life class, our educator was about to go on her spiel about abstinence. A golden exchange went down a little something like this. "We're going to talk about a certain concept today. It starts with the letter A. Who knows what we might be talking about?" A 12-year-old girl shouts across the room a word that begins with A and means doing it in the butt. My teacher asked my class on a similar note, what's the one sure way to avoid HIV? Guy in my class stands up and announces with his hands on his hips, only do it in the butt. If only. Sincerely from the gay community. I can't believe that in not one, but 2 abstinence classes, kids were throwing them off by asking questions about doing it in the butt. Well done, kids. My friend, can we cook human egg into an omelette? Good days. My 9th grade life class teacher liked to pick on the students a little bit for fun, and he asked one of the boys, what would you do if you walked into a room and there was an undressed woman on your bed? The kid immediately said, is it my mom? I've spent many years teaching life class. In that time, many obscure questions have been asked, and I've prided on keeping a straight face and answering professionally. Apart from once. A class of 30 13-year-old boys and girls. The boy at the far end of my classroom, sir, what happens if we pee in her when we're doing the deed? Quick as you like, a girl quipped up, she'll dump you daft F-word. I did that once and she said it turned her on. You have an odd taste in women. I came here to write, is it possible to pee in a girl during fun times? This must be a more common question than I thought. Our 5th grade, 10-year-olds or so, life class, we had to turn in any questions on anonymous note cards. One person just wrote, why do people do the deed? They had a good point. The video we watched didn't say anything about it being enjoyable or rewarding at all, just the mechanics of it. For kids who hadn't developed the urges yet, it was weird as F to think about. Can you break a hard pee-pee? Can I get pregnant from a dog? Popular blonde girl, 9th grade. Oh no. I think you mean ruh-roh. With a diagram of female anatomy projected on the wall, a kid raised his hand and said, I have a question. Everyone stopped and looked at him. The teacher said, all right, go ahead. So that's where I put it in, right? The teacher says, well, if you're talking about the act of doing the deed, then yes. The kid spoke loud enough for the room to hear him as he made a little note, put pee-pee in hoo-ha, then said, okay, can we go now? Our teacher told the class that since we wouldn't ask a single question at the end of the 3-day class, we each had to write a question on a piece of paper, fold it up, and give it to him. He only chose a few pieces of paper to read from, and mine was the first. Can you have 3 biological parents? Me and a few of my buddies have been debating this for a while, and I wanted to prove to them that it wasn't possible. So he read it and got pretty annoyed and said, no, it's not possible. Y'all are some messed up kids. Everyone was laughing, which made him even angrier. He angrily read the rest of the notes and then had the principal come in to talk to the class for quite a while. I asked at a Jewish day school, if it's Passover and a girl has a yeast infection, is it unkosher to eat her out? If you wear Coca-Cola flavored protection, do you have Coca-Cola flavored babies? Happened in 5th grade. Not really a question, but still funny as heck. Kid 1. What happens if the protection breaks? Teacher. Then your partner will become pregnant. Kid 2. Oh, crap. Teacher. Are you trying to tell me that you're active in that way? Kid. Not since I lost your mom's phone number. That kid was suspended for a week. Wasn't from a student, but the teacher said one of the silliest things I'd ever heard. He said he classifies oral fun times as the same as regular doing the deed, because the splooge can drip down into her hoo-ha from her mouth and impregnate her. I was stunned. Dear listeners, that was one hell of a statement to convert to a YouTube-friendly, safe-for-work format, and to know that a teacher said that in its uncensored format to children. My goodness gracious. What happens when you pull your foreskin back too far? Lots of pain and blood, along with a quick trip to the hospital is what happens. It's not fun. Can you get pregnant from doing it in the butt? Teacher, see me after class? My favorite reply to a question was a 5th grade girl. When I wipe, I can see I have some hair down there. How do I get rid of it? Of course, my response is along the lines of, it's natural, you don't need to get rid of it, it protects your body. To which a sassy little thing replied to her with a wave of her hand, girl, my mum gets a Brazilian, I'm just gonna do that. I had a hard time keeping a straight face. There was a kid in my grade who always asked some fairly strange questions during life class. Highlights included when he asked if a bug could crawl into a hoo-ha and if he could get it off with a glass of water as an adult fun time aid. 7th grade biology, not life class, We were talking about the two-headed girls. My friend asked which one felt the climax when they did the deed, and what the other head is supposed to do when they're doing it. Do they look away, or is it basically a threesome? I nearly busted one myself from laughing so hard. Life class in an all-boys school. The lecturer mentioned that HIV can be transmitted orally and by doing it in the butt due to bodily fluid transfer during said events, but then said that the HIV virus cannot survive long exposures to air. I put 2 and 2 together and asked, so is doing the deed airtight, while miming the penetration act with my fingers? I got detention for a week. If 2 bearded men kiss, will they get crabs? Watts Middle High School, Centerville, Ohio, circa 1981. Credit the anonymous question submission box and a teacher willing to read out loud whatever questions came out of the box. Ah well, screw it, I've got a story for this. We had a gay dude with HIV come to my summer camp to do a life class talk. He asked if we had any questions, saying, literally any question. Someone took it literally and asked, what's the biggest pee-pee you've ever had? Without missing a beat, the instructor said, bigger than yours. If you're doing it really hard, can your pee-pee break off? Still cheers me up. Showing my age here, I was in high school when Jersey Shore was in its heyday. There's an episode where Snooki refuses to go into the ocean because it's full of frickin' whale sperm. So a girl in my class asked our health teacher if the ocean was in fact full of whale semen. My name is Ed. A girl asked me, so what day do we start life class? I took advantage of the situation and started rubbing my hands together and saying, ah yes, whenever you like. An awkward silence followed, then one kid says, oh, and starts busting up laughing. Then a whole cascade of laughs happen as people start to get it, and then the crowd that needed an explanation. A later addition to this story. Isn't it obvious enough that this happened in 7th grade when I was 12 years old? My goodness, I condemn those horrible kind of creeps, and I'm also an IT consultant that happily performed my duty to report on an executive who had kiddie content on his computer. Also, I admit, I thought of it at the beginning of the semester and I was dying for the right moment to say it. Thank you for clearing that up, Ed. I must admit I automatically assumed you were a teacher and I was getting very, very concerned. Not quite life class, but my high school brought in a guy that specialized in STDs to teach us about them, how to recognize when we or our partner is infected, and how to protect against them in general. Had an anonymous Q&A section where people wrote down their questions on paper and put it in a box, then he randomly drew and discussed. Most of the questions were either decent ones or your basic wee-wee jokes. Then he pulled one out and read, is it safe to do the deed on my dog? And everyone just burst out laughing. After a moment or two of the teachers getting everyone calmed down, he started talking. We all expected him to launch into how this is disgusting and unsafe, etc. We completely lost our crap when he went on to not only say that it was perfectly safe, apparently the only known STD transmissible between humans and canines results in a flu-like infection for a few weeks, and that's it. But he actually went on to say that since humans and dogs cannot get pregnant from each other, he actually recommends this. The horror on our teachers' faces was absolutely priceless. It's truly a shame that this happened in the days before smartphones were really a thing. That crap was front-page grade madness. If a guy puts a pee-pee in a butt, can it get turned inside out? A guy in our 5th grade life class asked me if he could fit his entire head inside a hoo-ha, and then proceeded to sing A Whole New World. Dude was 10. Someone asked if you could use saran wrap, the crinkly plastic candy wrappers for stuff like Jolly Ranchers, as a makeshift rubber. The entire class couldn't help laughing and we got in trouble because we all had to agree to be mature. You can't make freshmen act mature. Can you still get pregnant if the pee-pee is too small and can't reach the cervix? Professor Speaker Person looked high as F trying to comprehend that one. How is Babby formed? 38 plus 2 weeks pregnant? Can oo get pregente? Is semen flammable? What color is a zebra's pee-pee? Wait, I can contribute here. Guy in the 7th grade loudly decried wearing a rubber and said he had a better method. He'd put lemon juice on his pee-pee just before doing the deed, and even though it was terrible stinging for both of them, it killed the sperm and meant he could go in raw, worry-free. The next year he dropped to take care of his newborn child. Is D-word for a female common adult fun times toy a country? The girl was an idiot, and the funniest part was, She asked the head of the geography department. There is a city in Newfoundland with that name, from the last I remember. You can Google it. Number 1. Do people really say giggity giggity while doing the deed? 2. It's been said women have 3 holes. Please explain. 3. How does the woman poop out the baby? 8th grade life skills class. Can you use duct tape instead of a rubber? Anonymous note in the question box. Had a guy ask this anonymously via card in a hat during one of those life class things during freshman year of college. The card read, PP plus PP, ? First question. Professor was tenured and didn't give an F, so she looks at the group and says, I can only interpret this as asking if you have one. It will be located between your legs and will be slightly smaller than your pinky. Would have to say the best question I heard was from my 15-year-old sister and her best friend in health class this past year. Had the box with written anonymous question. First question was theirs. What do you do when guys don't understand no? My sister said teacher just stood there like, I don't know how to respond to that. The proper answer is pepper spray. 8th grade health class had a pretty chill teacher. After spring break, we begin the life class health unit. Teacher starts the class off. What do people typically find attractive in others? Obviously, he was expecting a few answers, some maybe a little edgier than others. Before anyone else could answer, a kid just blurts out, feet! This wasn't a question, but something I said in life skills class when I was like 13 or so, and for a while I found it embarrassing, but now I just find it funny. We were discussing the fact that when a woman is pregnant, her time of the month stops. So I, ever the class clown, said, so the baby's kind of like a tampon, right? It just sucks up all the blood like a very tiny vampire. The entire class and the teacher, actually, screw her, she was my science teacher for 2 years, and she was a butthole, looked at me like I'd absolutely lost my mind. Teachers. How easy is it to tell if a student has a crush on another? And what interesting moments between the two can you share? High school teacher. Depending on the kids' personalities, they either get louder or quieter when their crushes are present. The loud ones are frickin' annoying. The quiet ones are the ones I would say purposefully sit next to their crushes. Oh god, I just realized that my 66-year-old GOV teacher totally knows. Teenagers are not subtle by nature, but they are amazingly oblivious when it comes to matters of the heart. They are really perceptive with other things, though. The boys almost never recognize if a girl likes them, and the girl never realizes that the guy is showing interest. It's funny to watch it happen. It's so blatantly obvious as an outsider, but I remember being just as oblivious as a student. It's called crushing self-doubt. I had a girl literally ask me out, and I slept on it and convinced myself she was just screwing with me in an attempt to embarrass me. Oh, similar to me, there was a girl me and my friends all liked in primary school. I said no in case they had bad intent. What if a girl was just too shy to find out herself? Back in 5th grade, I had a crush on a girl named Jenny. She was sweet and I really liked her, even if, innocently. Since this was 5th grade in the elementary school, I was in Boy Scouts with her brother, and my best friend told said brother that I had a crush on his sister, and he apparently passed it along to Jenny. Toward the end of the school year, she hands me a folded-up note telling me not to read it until after I got home. I waited like 5 minutes and popped that sucker open, and it's basically a confession that her brother told me that I liked her, but that he sometimes lies to her, and she just wanted me to check either yes or no. I was so embarrassed that her brother told her that I just ignored the letter completely. Oof. Well, to be honest, I know people who aren't much better attuned as grown adults either. I am completely oblivious to signals, as are a lot of my friends of all genders. Awkward story, my students are all between 8 and 10, and a few have noticeably hit the point where they're obviously starting to notice the opposite sex. I have 2 students that I'll give fake names. A boy, James, and a girl, Lucy, in my class. They're always together, recess, lunchtime, free choice, and the two are always working together. They're both very shy and giggly, and it seemed a mutual crush was there, noted by me and their math teacher as well. One day I hear James getting teased by some other kids for his crush on Lucy. His math teacher and I pull him aside and have a talk with him. We tell him that we'll be talking with the class as a whole about crushes and teasing. He's not the only one. His math teacher also tells him that if he does have a crush on Lucy, it's nothing to be embarrassed about because she's a nice, sweet girl. James just looks awkward and asks to go, so we let him. A few days later, I'm walking my kids out to the parent pickup and I see Lucy's dad is here to pick her up. James waves to both of them as they leave and I ask if he's been over to Lucy's house to play and if he knows her dad. Yeah, miss, that's my uncle. Oh, crap. I've encouraged cousin love. I awkwardly gather my nerves to say, so you remember that talk we had about Lucy and liking her? Well, I didn't realize she was your cousin. Yeah, I thought you didn't. That was weird, miss. Then he just laughed and said he liked a different girl anyway in his older sister's class. In conclusion, 10-year-old is into cougars, not cousins. Oh man, the longing stares across the room, the almost wistful what-ifs you can just see in their eyes. When I was in middle school, that was me. Fortunately, the girls in the bar after 1:30 are usually drunk and desperate too. Not really. I close down the local bar about once a week. I'm happily married but friends with one of the bartenders, so I hang out until our shift is over if there are sketchy people, and there are almost always sketchy people. It's like the old saying, the odds are good, but the goods are odd. I had a toothless dude and his wife sit down next to me. She literally had a bandaged head wound, and he asked me for a threesome, so she wouldn't have to die not knowing a woman's touch. Computer science/computational physics university lecturer here. Men tend to outnumber women 10-1 in my lecture groups. Odd scenarios. My favorite being 4 of my students simultaneously being exceedingly into the same exceedingly pretty woman, who was in the realms of shy but unremittingly kind. She also happened to be a lesbian. I knew this and they did not. Of course, only 2 people could sit next to her in a lecture theater, and an actual friend of hers usually took one of those spots. So the 4 of them would try to play it cool as she sat down, and then desperately try to get as close as possible without giving the game away. Like a single round of musical chairs where only one person can win, but there's definitely never going to be a prize any of the players want. It's important to also be aware that these were nerds of the highest order, so at a certain point they were just running and shoving one another, charging down the aisle like the adults they apparently were. I was eventually forced to intervene and end the game when one of them, honest to God, vaulted a row of seats and nearly landed on another student. They deliberately avoided her after I pulled them aside, which was probably great for her, but terrible for me. I found their fruitless game a never-ending source of comedy. I'm a substitute teacher, and my favorite student with a blatant crush experience was with a 2nd grade class. I picked the kids up from the yard after recess, and a boy came to me very upset because one of the girls had been chasing him the entire recess. Once we got back to class, I talked with the girl asking for her side of the story. Conversation went something like this. Me. Jose was pretty upset about something that happened this recess. Do you want to tell me what happened? Girl. We were playing. He said you were chasing him. Is that true? Slight blush. Yeah. Do you think he wanted you to be chasing him? No. If you knew he didn't want to be chased, why were you chasing him? Huge blush, guilty smile, and hunched shoulders. He makes me laugh. It's funny how something that would be completely creepy and unacceptable in the realm of grown adults seems so cute when it's between little kids. Don't know what that says about us. I worked in the kindergarten for a brief period between high school and uni, and there were a couple of little 5-year-old girls who just walked up to the boys they decided they liked and kissed them forcefully, informing them that they were now their husbands. But the one that sticks to mind is the little 2.5-year-old from my group. She spoke only a little at the time and didn't bother much with learning the names of the grown-ups to any extent. But shortly before I left, they hired a really young guy, about 19, as an assistant. The girl sees him walking into the ward for the first time and just freezes. She actually dropped her toy and her eyes go round like saucers, her jaw dropping. It was both adorable and absolutely hilarious to watch. We introduced him and none of the kids were that fussed, but she just stood there, mouthing his name, whispering it to herself a few times to make sure she got it right. He sat down on the playmat with her and she couldn't take her eyes off him. She offered him a toy which he accepted gracefully, and I swear she lost her breath. From then on, she loved him. She was quite shy to begin with, walking up to him at times, saying his name, and then when she got his attention, she would giggle uncontrollably, blushing bright red, and run away. If he took sick days or didn't come in till late, she would get sort of depressed and not want to play much. All the kids played favorites with the assistants, little boys have their crushes and so on, but this one was a little different. It was as if she had decided he was her soulmate. He was so kind to her, and the kind of relationship they had was never anything that made you think anything creepy. He just couldn't bear to reject her. In the afternoons, he'd read to the kids for as long as they were willing to sit still and listen, and she always made sure to be the one to sit on his lap or next to him to flip the pages. I'm teaching 7th grade right now. It's crazy easy to tell. It makes me wonder if I was that oblivious when I was their age, or worse, if there were girls that were obvious towards me and I didn't notice. It's like they don't even hide it. One of my boys carries a girl's books every day. It's clear to me that he has a crush on her. I learned recently that she has a different one of these guys to carry her books between every class. I mean, that's just manipulative. She's got to know, right? Maybe, maybe not. As clueless as these guys are that carrying books isn't some grand romantic gesture, she may be just as unaware that's why they're doing it. Girlfriends do that stuff for each other all the time. We borrow and lend and carry and hide and all of that. So a guy doing that is basically doing friendship stuff from her perspective. Also, we pay attention to each other a lot. We notice if there's a new haircut or sweater or she's lost weight and all that. That's normal everyday behavior, especially for teenage girls. I've got a 9th grader and I've seen her around some of the guys in her orchestra. They bring her music over, ask with fixed and nervous smiles how she's doing today, sit next to her at picnics and stuff. One of them even asked her to get my recipe for baked beans. And you've got to be desperate for conversation when baked beans recipe seems to be the logical choice. But when I asked if there's any guys into her, she shrugged and says, "Nah, boys don't really notice me." I finally sat down and was like, "Look, I don't want you spilling this or embarrassing them, but Todd, Joe, and Mike, not real names, all like you. They can't come out and say it, but they are interested in you. Do whatever you want with that knowledge, but you should know what the signs of interest look like." And I laid it out for her. She honestly had no idea what low-key stuff looks like, because movies and all that are always big sweeping gestures, not quietly jockeying for a seat as 4th chair if you're 2nd, so they can sit next to you, or having your eyes way too wide open, or talking to you about some quite banal things just to talk to you. Not that I'm saying guys should all be super romantic and swing for the fences, but a huge number of dudes didn't realize they'd been flirted with over the years. Girls have the same problem. We're not exactly speaking 2 different languages, but we're sure as hell working from different subtexts. I'll say again, this is just confirming to me that a lot of adults are barely more evolved than kids in how they behave when it comes to matters of the heart. I have this one teacher that will totally just say anything that's on her mind. Once she just flat out said, "Do you guys like each other or what?" to these 2 kids in my class. Within 3 days, they were dating and still are. That could have just as easily resulted in them being super embarrassed and avoiding each other forever. I know a teacher who did this all of the time. She paired kids together so much in her mind that she was obsessed with getting 2 kids together. Once there was this girl who liked to hang out with this guy in her class. The very first day she asked if they were dating and the girl just said no because she had a boyfriend and they were very happy. For weeks, the teacher would ask if her and her boyfriend had broken up yet, so that her and this other guy could date. Eventually, the girl told her to stop because rumors were starting to spread around the school. Then the day came when the teacher asked and the girl just ran out of the room crying because her boyfriend actually broke up with her. Her and the other boy never got together, but it was funny to see my sister give our teacher the death stare for making her feel bad, even when the teacher told her to stop because it was making her uncomfortable. Band in high school is a funny place. Since kids are around each other a lot more of the time than the average student, they tend to get band goggles. It's pretty obvious to see relationships blossoming. More often than not, it's a good thing, but every now and again you get the older upperclassmen boys going after naive freshman girls. And boy oh boy does that turn ugly quick. The drama can be outrageous. Funniest, most shocking moment, a girl who's an awesome student had been dating a true player on and off for the last year. She went so far to tell me that she got back together with him after he cheated on her. So literally last Friday, I'm sitting in the band hall watching the kids practice. This sweet girl comes into the hall and is walking with a sense of purpose. As she passes me, she says something under her breath that I didn't quite get the first time. Confused by what she said, I watch her walk up to the guy. She grabs him by the shoulders and spins him around. She says something to which he responds with a short answer, but had that look on his face that he got caught doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. She then balls up her fists and socks the guy 4 to 5 times and then storms off. At that point, I realized that what she said was, "Teacher, you're gonna have to write me an office referral." Best referral ever. I teach English. I remember a star football player, senior, coming into the room to rap with me for a bit before the 3rd period start every Friday. In my 3rd period, a female student, junior, of mine, who was extremely intelligent and very pretty, yet somewhat shy being an AP student and all, was sitting in the front row and always stared at him when he came in. He would talk about football and stuff with me, and every so often I'd look back at her still staring right at him and smiling the entire time. She would not turn that smile off no matter who was looking or what anyone said. It was actually one of the cutest/saddest things I've ever seen, seeing as how the guy never even turned around to notice her. If he did, who knows, maybe they would have hit it off. Maybe they did after they weren't my students. Is no one going to question that a football player rapped with you during school? Do you teach at East High? Okay, after 5 people writing me to tell me the meaning of the word rap, I think that no one needed to. At the very least, you guys should have just seen I was making a pop culture reference. Former 6th grade teacher here. I was here to witness one of my kids take his first big leap at lunch. He asked the girl he had a crush on, "Will you go on a date with me?" She smiled and said yes. Immediately, the boy on the other side of her said, "Don't go out with this screwbag, go out with me." She smiled and said okay. He was pretty shattered for the rest of the week. He was in the same class as the girl, so there was a lot of longing looks and wistful sighs. I'm pretty sure that's the kind of thing you remember forever. Middle school is tough, man. I wasn't a teacher. I was a teacher helper? I mean, it was only 6th grade, but it was extremely easy. Looking at everyone facing you, you start to realize what people are focusing on. I know when kids are texting because they look straight at me and every 2 minutes look down for 2 seconds and have their hands under the table. For a crush, it is the long stares at the back of their crush's head while fiddling with an object like the pencil or their hair. As a quick look away when the crush looks at them, it's easy. God damn, how many of our teachers were chuckling under their breath watching our antics at school? Anyone else wondering? Oh, it's painfully obvious most of the time. Here are some things I saw. Continuous glances at the same person. Body language that positions the person closer to the other person. Interjecting into a conversation that the person was not engaged in to begin with. Being helpful more so for that person than for anyone else in class. Flirting, obviously. Boastful storytelling. A lot of times it's outlandish and very obviously untrue. Hanging around the other person uninvited. And checking out the other person while oblivious to their surroundings. What's funny is that most people think they're being sneaky or inconspicuous. From my vantage point in the front of the classroom, these things seem so obvious as to be genuinely painful to observe. It was especially painful when the feelings were intentionally unreciprocated. I taught in college for a bit, if you're wondering. I'm not a teacher, but in 6th grade, 2002, a girl in my class, history with Mrs. Thompson, sat in the next row over from me every day. I was crushing on another girl and ignorant of the fact that she liked me. Midwinter, Mrs. Thompson is handing back papers and stops between the two of us while glancing back and forth and says something along the lines of, "I don't know who to give this paper back to." She says the girl's first name, or Mr., my last name. Mrs. Thompson hands the paper back to her. She'd been practicing writing her name with my last name so much in her notebook, apparently like many teenage girls do, that she had accidentally written it on her homework when she handed it in. 6 years later at my high school graduation, a half dozen of my former teachers, including Mrs. Thompson, were sitting around talking with my friends and me and brought up that paper where a girl had written my last name on her paper. They found it cute and endearing and told other various stories of middle school love. A year and a half ago, I married that girl. College perspective. I can usually tell which of my students have hooked up. I can almost always tell when the girls are crushing on guys in my classes. It's usually painfully obvious, especially from the perspective of the front of the room. I can also tell that you're texting, no matter how much you work to camouflage it. Sometimes when I assign group work of any kind, I like to intentionally split up or subvert the secret lovebirds, just to see how they react. I'm a bit of a sadist like that. Oh, freshmen, all pheromones, alcohol, romantic overconfidence, and a complete lack of experience with the real world. So much fun. I work in college and teach early morning classes to 17 to 24-year-olds, mostly. It's painfully obvious who just did a walk of shame to class and occasionally who's screwing someone else in the room. The most awkward thing that ever happened was some guy who came into the class and interrupted a lecture to hit on a girl in the front row. He wasn't even a student, just some idiot who walked by our open campus and recognized the girl through the window as the girl who he saw at Jack in the Box a week earlier. He comes in and just starts talking to her. I'm in such shock that this guy just randomly walked in that I was speechless and just stood there watching it. After about a minute, I came to my senses and realized the situation. Here's this 40-plus-year-old dude, tatted up with his pants hanging from his butt, reeking of booze and cigarettes at 9 a.m., hitting on a very uncomfortable-looking tiny blonde, 18 years old. I told him this is my classroom and that I wouldn't have him interrupting. He would have to go. He didn't put up a fight, he just asked when the class was over so he could come back to mac him some. I told him we were out at noon. We were really done by 10, and that was the last day of class. The day of the final, a week later, on a different room, I kept my eyes open, but he never showed. I asked the student, but she only knew him from a single instance of standing in line in front of him at Jack in the Box. I teach 16-year-olds. When a girl likes a guy, she'll draw hearts on his notes. When a guy likes a girl, he'll draw male anatomy on her notes. That might be the greatest thing I've read in this collection of stories. A couple met in my high school chemistry classroom. This was 3 years ago. He was a junior in high school, she was a sophomore. They told me last fall that when the date is set, I'll be invited to the wedding. Best example of chemistry ever. This actually happened in my acting class just today. Our teacher said he had an exercise to show us how much subtext there is under the surface of our actions. Pick a person in here who you have something you desperately want to say something to and never could. Think about it really hard and don't make eye contact with them or they'll know. Everyone in this class knows each other very well. There's a lot of dirt to stir up. The silence was deep and uncomfortable. Now, go ahead and say it. You could hear their buttholes pucker. People looked numb with fear and hesitation. The teacher, having proved his point about rich subtext, opened his mouth to end the exercise before anyone could actually speak. Now, just then a kid jumped up from his chair arduously and let loose with, "Sadie, you're hot as hell and I want to frick your brains out." The room exploded. The result was pandemonium. One kid was laughing so hard he nearly tipped his desk right over onto the floor. The teacher was in shock. The kid was red in the face and laughing uneasily. The amazing thing was the girl. She didn't smile, didn't acknowledge it, nothing. She just sat there, stock still, like Marie Antoinette at the guillotine, totally above the situation. I think she must have been mortified and didn't know what to do. The teacher's response: "I have been doing that exercise for decades, and no one has ever actually said anything." The next day, and I crap you not, I saw this kid and Sadie walk in, a little apart, both grinning. He was listening to a song on her iPod. They both fell asleep in class. Great success.
Doctors of Reddit, what is your most "oh my god, what is that" moment while treating a patient? Content warning, literally all of these are disgusting. Like, seriously, if you don't have a strong stomach or are easily squeamish, do not listen to or watch this video. With that being said, let's move on to the video. Well, I'm not a doctor yet, but here's a story from one of my professors. This was in rural Alabama. This middle-aged married couple had presented to the ER after they had been drinking for almost the entirety of the evening and got into a heated argument. Things got heated, and the woman eventually fell off the porch of their trailer into the shrubs a few feet below. The husband, in his drunken state, suddenly dropped the argument and came to his wife's aid. She didn't suffer anything too serious, just a couple scratches here and there, except for what the man said looked like a piece of glass or pipe or something that became lodged in the woman's arm when she hit the ground. He decided to not come to the hospital because he could remove this object himself. He got his largest pair of pliers and gripped onto this glass/pipe-looking thing lodged in his helpless wife's arm. He clamped down and pulled, cranked and cranked, trying to remove this object, and it wouldn't budge. With his masculinity defeated and the alcohol wearing off on both of them, they decided it's sensible to finally come to the ER. Upon arriving to the ER, the doctor immediately realized this poor woman had a compound fracture of her humerus, and this, quote, pipe or piece of glass thing was her bones sticking through her skin that her husband was trying to pry out with a pair of pliers. True story. Yeah, for anyone who's played Far Cry 2, those healing animations are what not to do in a situation where you break your bones. Content warning, this one's really gross. OBGYN rotations. I was delivering my first baby. It was an older lady from the rural side of town. When I asked her to push as the baby had fully crowned, a wad of worms exited her anus. I'm talking at least 60 live worms. I gagged so hard, but managed to keep a straight face throughout and delivered the baby. I realized then and there that OBGYN was not for me. Oh my god! That's enough internet for today! I am a surgery resident. I once helped operate on a man whose face was chewed off by a bear. I had to find little scraps of skin at the edges of the hole in the middle of his face and tried to decide where they went to try and make the damage smaller. I also saw a patient come to the emergency department with a Barbie in their rectum. He apparently puts the arms up and legs down like a diving position, rubber bands the arms together, then places it in his rectum for a time. When he wants it out, he takes laxatives, only this time, it got stuck. The kicker? When we removed it, he asked for it back. Number 1. Maggots on a gangrenous foot. Both times, I almost lost my lunch. The worst part was that the second time I knew exactly what the faint crunching meant. Oh my god. But I still had to remove the sock/shoes. Number 2. Telling a highly addicted PT that I wouldn't be giving him the narcotic RX he wanted after he had run out of his prescribed meds early because he took too many. This was actually the only time I've ever said frick to a patient. I'm not giving you an RX. I also spoke with your pain management doctor and he does not want me to fill anything for you since you made the choice to take too many of your medicines. The patient starts flapping arms and legs in bed. What are you doing? I'm having a seizure. That's not a seizure, that's a tantrum. Patient gets completely still, looks me straight in the eye, and craps his pants. What the frick did you do that for? Because you're not giving me the medicine I need. Now you have to tell the nurse to come clean me up. Yeah, no. I will have the nurse bring you a clean gown and a towel. Bathroom's right next door. This was in med school, dermatology rotation. I got to see my own patient. So I asked what the problem was. He told me he thought his genital warts were back. I asked why. He didn't say a word, but turned around, dropped his pants, spread his butt cheeks, and showed me a cluster of genital warts around his anus at least 10 centimeters in diameter. Even when he stood up straight, it was just sticking out of his buttocks. I put up my most professional voice to say, yes, I think you're right. The man thought this was hilarious. I'm not sure if I've not seen more surprising things after this, or I've just gotten used to them. ER nurse here. We brought a code trauma off the helicopter. A lady who was a passenger in a really bad wreck. Her husband was driving and was dead at the scene. Once we got her stable, the OR staff came to take her to surgery. I gathered up the clothes that we had cut off of her and grabbed her purse that EMTs had removed from the car. There was a lot of blood on it, so I thought I should just grab her wallet instead. I reached in and grabbed what I thought was her wallet, pulled it out. It had hair. It was a chunk of her husband's scalp. I interned in a city that gets very cold in the winter. Homeless people who were having a tough time surviving outdoors would come to the ED to get admitted, even if just overnight. They get a warm bed, a few hot meals, and a cleanup. This one fellow was in really rough shape, couldn't walk. The poor nurses did most of the cleanup. Delousing, sponge bath, dressing the open sores. My job was to do the physical exam, including the mandatory rectal. Literally had to lift that scrawny flap of a butt cheek and pick the encrusted dirt/feces/matted hair away from the rectum to expose the anus. Thankfully, I only had to turn 180 degrees to reach the sink that I dry heaved into. But before this fellow can be discharged, he needs a podiatry consult. His black, gnarled feet have thick yellow big toenails that have grown in a circle and are now piercing the bottom of the toe, the reason he can't walk. Podiatrist intern comes in, starts a foot soak, and proceeds to tackle those nails with something that can only be described as modified tin snips. Now you know how some people have that habit of opening their mouth when concentrating really hard? Yup, he clipped that nasty nail and it flipped right into his mouth. We shared the sink. It's okay, Ryan. You've only got 13 more minutes to go. You're gonna be fine. Story from one of my friends who worked as a paramedic in Hamburg for some time. Mind you, this is disgusting. They were called to an unconscious person, drug addict, who was slumped down on a park bench close to the train station where back in the days the most drug addicts would hang around. They approached the guy and tried to wake him up, checked his vital signs, etc., then put him on the ground. He had no shoes on, but only wrapped up his legs in plastic bags. If you have ever been around hardcore drug addicts, you know most of them don't smell too good. After a while, they just give up on personal hygiene, which incidentally is actually more dangerous than the drug itself, since they tend not to treat their scabs and whatnot. This guy reeked to high heaven, and once they proceeded to check his plastic bag shoes, they saw why. His legs up to his knees were completely black and full of maggots. He had an infection in both legs due to shooting up heroin and never treated them. My friend said that once they lifted the plastic bags up a little, which were melted into his decaying flesh, little mountains of maggots would fill around his feet. Hands down, one of the most disgusting things he has seen. Doctor here. When I was working in the ER one evening, I had my worst experience so far. I was called to one of the examination rooms that are designed for infectious patients. This is already a bad sign, as it usually involves some sort of abscess that needs to be drained. However, this time, it was far worse. I was told by the nurse that it involved a man who had bilateral venous ulcers on his legs and that they were now infected. I looked through his journal and saw that he last saw a doctor about 10 months earlier and no note of any checkups after, not by a nurse or a GP. Therefore, I asked my nurse when someone last took a look at his legs. Quote, not since his last journal entry. Then I asked when was the last time he changed his dressings on the legs. Quote, he hasn't. Some background info on the patient. Old man who lived by himself in his trailer that was parked in the middle of a forest. He had no running water. He was a bit of a drinker and a general I don't give a crap mentality. Awesome. Suited up and went into the room. The room smelled like an odd combination of stale beer, mold, and disease. Certain infections smelled different, and this one was very pungent, almost sulfuric. I introduced myself to the patient, who didn't understand what the heck he was doing there. All he wanted was some antibiotics for a flu, and then he was sent here. Why the heck do you want to look at my legs for? They were already taken care of last year. Great. So we started unfolding the dressing. They were crusty and crackled as we unwrapped the first leg. As we got deeper, it changed color to some sickly yellow, and the stench became worse and worse. One of my nurses left the room to throw up. Then I saw it. Very small, but inside a fold, there was a little maggot who squirmed. Crap. When we finally got to the wound, we saw all the little maggots feasting on this man. There must have been 50 of them. The stench was absurd. I was focusing a lot to breathe through my mouth, but then I felt like I could taste it, which made it even worse. My nurse came back and promptly went out again. I unwrapped his other leg, and same story there, but the infection was much deeper, and I could see a few tendons on the base of the ulcer. Absolutely delicious. We had to clean off the maggots and place them in a bowl, but they were squirming and went on the floor and crawled all over the place. I had to watch my feet so I didn't step on them. After that, we took the patient to hose him down to at least try to get rid of some of the smell. Then booked to the OR for debridement and a fresh vacuum dressing. Discharged a few days later with strict instructions and booked him in to return for redressings and checkups. Then, we never heard from him again. TLDR, maggots. Lots of maggots. Removed a shoe from a patient with a severe diabetic foot. 2 cockroaches crawled out of it. Paramedic here, working in the ER one night. We had a guy come in complaining of groin pain, so we bring him back, and it turns out he has a master lock, the kind with the spinning dial that you used to secure your locker at school, locked around his member. Essentially, blood could flow in, but could not flow back out, so this thing was hugely swollen. He had panicked after he realized he could not remember the code, dealing with a real genius here, and he took a screwdriver to the dial and snapped it off. So, we consulted with urology, and the urologist wanted to take him to surgery, cut his ween lengthwise, slide the top out, then the bottom, and then suture it back. Needless to say, the patient wasn't thrilled with option A, so option B was for this big nurse, we'll call him Tom, to go in with bolt cutters and cut it off. Option B selected, curtain closes. Tom gives a 1, 2, 3. A loud scream at 3, a pop noise. Tom exits with a broken lock, and the man was sent to the floor to recover. That's just one of so many, but I always tell that one. A bit late to the party, but here's my contribution. I have some nasty pus stories, but I think the top post wins hands down in that category, so here's something a bit different. Just a couple of months ago, actually. Woman about 35 years old comes in for a pap smear. Okay, no problem. Put the speculum in and maneuver it around a little bit to find the cervix, and I see something dark brown in the right lateral fornix. My first thought was, oh crap, cancer. You see, when I was an intern, I had a patient on whom I found very dark, friable tissue on the posterior wall of the upper genitalia, which eventually turned out to be rectal cancer that had spread into the genital wall and was quite advanced. You know, one of those patients you kind of never forget. Anyway, I try and gently scrape at this dark brown area to get a feel of what it was when the smell hit me. I imagine if death itself died and rotted for a few weeks, this is what it would smell like. My medical assistant scooted away to the edge of the room. Poor thing couldn't leave the room as she was my chaperone. I stopped breathing through my nose and started to breathe only a couple of times a minute from my mouth, of course turning my head away from the source of the smell to take a breath. Anyway, maneuvering the speculum a bit more and scraping a bit at the brown area some more revealed an answer to the mystery. It was a cylindrical, thick wad of something. An old tampon. The patient had no idea that it was there, and her period had ended over a week ago. So this thing had been there for over a week, and the lady was walking around living life as usual. Thankfully, she did not get toxic shock syndrome. Retrieval of the tampon was uneventful, and the lady was sent home with advice on being more careful with remembering to take out tampons, or perhaps consider switching to pads instead. Imaging tech here, so I basically look at black and white images of people's innards. Once I had a guy, and it looked like his abdomen was filled with fluid, but it looked very odd. Then I realized the fluid was moving. The guy had the biggest aortic aneurysm I've ever seen, so big I couldn't measure it on my machine. He got sent off to the hospital. I was in outpatient services that day, and I don't know what happened to him. I also had a woman with so many holes in her heart, in the muscle between the heart chambers, that it was like Swiss cheese. Another time, I was in a prison scanning a con. He'd been shot and all of his abdominal muscles were removed. He wore a Velcro girdle to keep his stomach in place. I put my scanner down on his abdomen, and I had to figure out what organs he was missing, because he had some removed from after being shot, but he had no clue. I think he was missing a kidney, the gallbladder, part of the liver, and like half his pancreas. Token, not a doctor, but I am a nurse and I have a story. I was working in the emergency department one afternoon, and we had an elderly lady just calling out, help me, repeatedly all afternoon. She was brought in by her nursing home for, quote, agitation, which is normally code for they can't handle them anymore. So the patient was placed with the carer assistant to try and calm her down and make sure she didn't wander around the ward. The carer was helping to feed the patient, and I walked past when suddenly the lady just breathed her liquid diet in and collapsed backwards. I, of course, instantly pushed the med emergency button, and everyone comes running from all over. We assess her airway, and it's deemed clear but not self-supporting. No food in there, which was strange. She wasn't breathing, and no heartbeat was present, so one of the male nurses starts compressing on her chest while another nurse tries to insert an airway. As he compressed on her chest, a literal fountain of murky green goo spurted from her mouth all over the walls, ceiling, medical staff, literally everywhere. And of course, we were all like, what the heck is this crap? And the poor male nurse had to keep compressing the chest while the other nurse kept trying to suction the patient's airway to clear it enough to insert an airway. After 5 or 6 minutes, the nurse finally gets the airway in after suctioning over 6 liters of this goo. And after some defib, the doctor declared the patient dead. The bay and the surroundings say 5 or 6 meters was just drenched in this slimy, murky, brown-green mess. It was absolutely, breathtakingly disgusting. Eventually, we found out the poor old lady had a massive bowel obstruction, had a cardiac arrest while eating, and the goo was days and days of liquid fecal matter. Safe to say, I scrubbed myself raw in the shower that night. Content warning. This one's pretty sad, violent, and messed up. On my first weeks in trauma ER, 4th year of med school, we had an 11-year-old girl come in who was literally dumped out of a car in front of a hospital with one side of her body completely mutilated. What remained of her limbs just hanging like huge chunks of meat, and the rest of her body was burned all over. And there was so much blood. Maybe it's because I panicked a little, but I don't think I've ever seen so much blood in my life. We later found out someone in her family, father or cousin, not sure, was a known criminal who had just got out of jail time for blowing up ATMs with homemade explosives. They claimed she found a stash they had hidden, but we really believe she was helping them pack it. Either way, it was the ugliest/saddest thing I've ever seen. Thankfully, this next story is a lot cheerier. I was working as a scribe when we went to see an 8-year-old girl that had a fever. Nothing too remarkable until we started the physical exam. We examined her head, normal. We examined her upper extremities, normal. Then we pulled up the blanket to examine the lower extremities. Her feet were the size of an infant's. You should have seen the look on the doctor's face as he was trying to figure out how the girl's feet got so small. The mother looked up at the doctor, saw the look of confusion on his face, and said, "Those aren't her feet." She pulled up the blanket a little further, revealing a pair of perfectly healthy feet, nestled next to the feet of a doll that she had put under the blanket. We saw the doll's feet and thought they were the girl's. For those wondering, she had the flu. She turned out fine. Paramedic here. Back when I was a rookie, we ran a call to assist the police with an injured person. Get on scene to 5 to 6 cops and a large naked man in cuffs sitting on the curb. In the middle of February, in the mid-Atlantic region. Check the guy out while talking to the cops. Apparently, he had decided to smoke some PCP and the cops ended up having to tase him. The part of the story you've been waiting for, one taser barb in the umbilicus and the other in the head of his member. TLDR, PCP leads to a new member piercing courtesy of the police. Last one, I promise. Surgical registrar here. I was working in a smallish hospital in a rural town in Australia. We were asked by the medical team to see a patient that had been admitted under their care by the emergency department overnight. Happens quite often in that hospital, with the CT demonstrating a very distended bladder. They apparently had trouble with the catheter, so they called me to have a look. With much hesitation, I went up to see her on the ward. So I managed to put the catheter in with a lot of trouble. This lady was fecally incontinent. A little bit of urine drains out, and I just keep thinking, something's not right. I go back and look at the CT scan, and the IDC placed in the emergency department looks like it's appropriately positioned, subsequently pulled out. Behind it was one big sucker of a uterus, absolutely full of what appeared to be a fluid density. The report read, along these lines, I crap you not, as follows. Conclusion. There is a very distended bladder. The catheter balloon is situated in the prostatic urethra. Moderate to severe hydronephrosis is noted. To all the people pointing out that women don't have prostatic urethras, I'm well aware. That was the whole point. The radiologist was very embarrassed and apologetic when I called him to amend the report. Long story short, I speak to the consultant. We get her to theater. With great difficulty, we manage to dissect our way around this huge uterus, and we call the O&G guys to come and help get it out. Unfortunately, during this process, the uterus bursts, and there is a boatload of pus that just streams out. It smells so freaking horrible. There are people gagging around us at this yellow-green, sulfuric-smelling goo. The scrub nurse can no longer take it and vomits in her mask. The consultant is looking at me like, screw you for bringing this to theater. We finished this case, and I am so glad. I get home, and I keep thinking, I can still smell this awful thing. I have another hour-long shower. All night, I can still smell this thing. Morning comes, I can't have breakfast because I can still smell it. I get to the hospital, and everyone is wearing masks. Apparently, the smell was so horrible, and the extraction in our theater was so outdated that it had somehow pumped the smell into the vents around the hospital. All night, small amounts were leaking out into the atmosphere, causing this horrendous smell. Silver lining? Lady lived for another 3 years. TLDR, I operated on a lady with a huge uterus full of pus. Consultant hated me for the rest of the year.
Medical professionals. What's something ridiculous you've had to explain to your patients? Story from 2015. To an 84-year-old man with a candlestick in his rectum. That you don't need to massage your prostate with a candle once a month. A doctor had apparently told him 15 years ago to do this, and he had not questioned it since. I was gonna say, well, it was a different time, but then I realized 15 years ago was the year 2000. September changed a lot of things, man. Firefighter/EMT here. Just because you're taking medication for something doesn't mean it's going to go away. Here's a real conversation that happens about once or twice per shift at minimum. Me. Do you have any medical history, diseases, sicknesses, and/or conditions I should be aware of? Patient. No. Are you currently taking or supposed to be taking any medications? Yeah, I'm on insert 12 different medications here. Ah, I see one of your medications is metformin. Are you a diabetic? Not anymore. I just told you I take meds for it. Me. Sigh. I had to explain to my 75-year-old grandmother that there isn't one straight tube connecting your ears. She put eardrops in, put cotton in her other ear before she laid down so it wouldn't leak out the other side. Those instructions must have gone in one ear and out the other. Having to explain that I can't figure out what's wrong with them over the phone. My mom called me and asked me what the rash on her elbow was. After 5 minutes of trying to explain that I needed to see the rash, I finally asked her what she thought of the shirt I was wearing. Took her a couple of seconds to figure it out. I mean, that's just a special level of ignorance right there. In the words of Ron Burgundy, I'm not even angry, I'm impressed. You're more likely to die from a dental abscess than dental x-rays. Dr. Oz is full of crap. I also hate it when people say, well, if they're so safe, then why do you step out of the room? And they act like it's fricking stumped me. The reason I step out of the room when taking x-rays is because I do that almost every day. You get it once every 3 years. I don't know if this is a good analogy, but you equate it to a bartender asked to share his drink with a customer. You can have a drink every once in a while, but if the bartender has to drink with every customer, he'd be very sick. Overweight lady with some liver damage. Had many conversations about diet and reducing alcohol intake. Patient had cut out whiskey and vodka, but did not know that Guinness had alcohol. Yes, this was in rural Ireland. About no alcohol. Alright, I'll just stick to Guinness then. No, that has alcohol in it. Really? But what about stout? Porter? IPA? Lager? Ale? Cider? My personal favourites are when the families of a loved one bring in food that's completely counter to their current medical condition. Off the top of my head, I've had a family bring in a get-well cake to their dad, who was on his 5th or 6th admission to DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. He was still on an insulin infusion, and the family didn't see the problem with giving him a cake because he woke up and was hungry. I've had families order in pizza to have a pizza party when their parent is admitted on the cardiology ward and on a salt and fluid restricted diet due to extensive heart failure. Good times. When I had my appendix removed, every fricking body brought me food. I had to go a week without anything, and they kept bringing me food. Returning visitors, food again. Only one person brought me a book to actually pass the time. I was crying and giving the food away, and crying and giving it away. It was awful. It is hard-coded into our DNA, I suppose. Just like every grandma resolves every situation with food, thus we are bound to go down the same road. I'm diabetic. I have a family that does these things. I tell them, no, I can't eat that. They insist that I can have a little bit, right? Hand me a huge slice of cake. No, I can't even eat a little bit. They try to make me feel guilty for not eating the cake they brought me. I have specific instructions now when I'm at the hospital. I'm currently under medical quarantine. I cannot be disturbed. It's weird to pretend to have MRSA. Medical professional here. Have many stories that fit the bill. One that sticks in my mind is a patient, 15-year-old kid that suffered a traumatic head injury, was in the ICU barely able to speak, obvious cognitive impairments due to the injury, and the family was strictly instructed to refrain from feeding him anything. Nothing by mouth, no water, nothing. The next morning I get an emergency page from the ICU because the patient is going into respiratory failure. I rush over to see the pulmonologist and nursing staff performing CPR on the kid. The parents are outside the room freaking out. Sadly, the kid didn't make it. Upon the autopsy, they pulled out a pepperoni slice, crust, and green jello from the kid's lungs. It was devastating as hell to tell the kid's parents that they killed him by sneaking him in food. The kid's throat muscles were so weakened by the brain injury that most of the food was ending up in his lungs. The parents thought that the medical team wasn't feeding him for yucks. The only way they could convey their love for him at this time was to give him foods he loved. Tragic lesson learned, I hope. That was pretty upsetting. I can't even imagine living with the knowledge of what happened. Let the rest of us know not to do this, folks. Paramedic friend of mine has had to explain to multiple people that diabetes is not something that everyone ends up getting in life. When a woman lets her diabetic son eat ridiculous amounts of sugar, then gets him to run around in the yard to burn it all off because I don't like pumping him full of all that insulin. That's not how this works, lady. Shadowed a dentist in a rural area where most patients were in poverty. One guy was so confused on why his teeth were rotting. He revealed that his diet consisted of sugar, and alcohol. The dentist had to explain sugar can lead to enamel loss. The guy said, "Nope, that's a lie. My wife is a dentist and had a similar patient tell her that it wasn't the sugar but the fluoride in the water that causes decay." I was in hospital with my girlfriend while the nurse undressed her. The nurse asked if it was all right for me to be in there. She knew we were together, and we said yes with a confused look. She then told us the story of a couple in their 80s who were in, and when she took down the wife's top to check her heartbeat, the husband covered his eyes and ran out of the room while the wife burst into tears. 40+ years of marriage, and they'd never seen each other in the nude. That's sad. Really, really frickin' sad. Taking a medication twice a day does not mean taking the doses together. One dose now, one dose later. Not both doses now. On a side note, don't give your son your sleeping medication. Ever. I remember in a country doctor's notebook, this young doctor who had just started in rural Russia, initially with no clue what the frick he was doing, and making it up as he went along for some stuff, had a patient with an infection of some sort. The guy was very smart and he enjoyed having an intellectual conversation with him, gave him the pills and sent him on his way. Then, a few days later, he saw the same guy in for a med OD. He said, "It was going to take weeks taking those pills, so I decided to just take them all at once and be done with it." A side note, this was adapted into a short series starring John Hamm and Daniel Radcliffe and is available on Netflix, called A Young Doctor's Notebook. It's really great. Radcliffe does a great job as the doctor. Repeat patient of the STD clinic I work at. Isn't there something I can buy, like over the counter, so I don't have to keep coming back in for chlamydia? Me. Contraceptive? Dirty patient. Nah, miss, I meant like a tea or something. When the doctors or nurses tell you it's a very bad idea to leave AMA or against medical advice, you should take their advice. Several years ago when I was a phlebot, a person who drew blood, I went to the nursing station so I could grab someone to follow me into the room. The patient was given a clot-busting drug, TPA. This stuff makes heparin look like child's play, and I would need to have a nurse hold pressure on the puncture site for at least 5 to 10 minutes to see if it had stopped bleeding in that time. The nurse told me stone-faced that they left AMA. After that drug, falling down could cause serious injury because you just don't clot at all. He was back in ER a short while later. Another lady decided that even though she was in the ICU, that since she got 4 units of blood and felt much better, it'd be okay for her to go ahead and leave. No, it's not okay. That's stupid. In nursing school, my labor and delivery teacher was covering contraceptives and demonstrated how to show patients how male contraceptives are used by putting them on our thumb. At the end of it, she emphasized, "Make sure you tell them that it doesn't actually go on their thumb, and that the way you put it on a thumb is how it should be placed on someone's manhood." I had a patient that was truly concerned that his cancer was contagious. He wanted to know how to keep his puppy from contracting it. He was literally more concerned about his tiny puppy getting cancer because of him than his own health. I'll never forget the joy and relief I saw in his eyes when I told him he could have all the puppy cuddles he wanted. For those of you wondering, the puppy cuddles were curative, of course. Aw man, that's super sweet. Dumb as heck, but still super sweet. For the purposes of surgery, vodka is not a clear liquid. I've been lied to by every one of my Russian homeopathic instructors, and I am going to demand a refund. Ooh, I have another one. I'm a nurse in general surgery. My patient had a note in her chat to not let her have any of the cups in the room, which I thought was strange. We've had other orders before for other patients saying they weren't allowed to have any metal utensils. The patient loved to swallow spoons and forks, but that's another story. But this was something new. I quickly found out why when I walked into her room for a morning report, and several cups of urine were sitting on her sink. Apparently, she was too lazy to get out of bed to pee, so she had her husband sneak in some more cups to conveniently pee in. No, peeing in a cup is not allowed. This happened multiple times after multiple talks with the patient, hence the order. Since I'm getting a lot of requests for the spoon dude, unfortunately it's not a very exciting story. He was a young gentleman in his late 20s and early 30s who came somewhat frequently to our floor for retrieving silverware from wherever it got stuck in his GI tract. Some people eat paper or laundry soap. His thing was swallowing cutlery. Once he downed several knife handles. How did he get the handles off? What drew him to these particular knives? After he ate one, what did it feel like to continue swallowing the others? So many questions. All meals were supervised for his visits. The catheter in your wang makes it feel like you have to pee, but you don't, it does it for you. No, don't just pull it out, you'll shred your bladder and seriously regret it. You're screaming right now because you're trying to pull out your catheter. Please stop. No, don't throw your pee bag at me, you'll be arrested for assault. Sincerely, hospital security. A few years ago, I was taking care of a woman from a rural part of our state. She had just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and it wasn't looking good. Her husband was kind of keeping his distance from her. As I was doing something in the corner of the room, he came up to me and whispered, "I can still kiss her, right?" I then had to explain that cancer is indeed not contagious and he won't catch her cancer. It was kind of heartbreaking. Oh man. Number 1. Soda has sugar. I had a diabetic man who didn't realize this. I just don't understand how it was even possible to not know this as a grown adult. He was a completely normal person otherwise, which is why it had me asking, WTF? Number 2. Pouring Lysol on your diabetic foot ulcer won't keep it from getting infected. Number 3. When we said clear liquids only, like Jell-O, water and popsicles, we did not mean that you should convince your mother to blend you some McDonald's burgers and fries so you can drink that through a straw. Number 4. Unless you've already done it at least once before, pushing a baby out of your hoo-ha will neither be a pleasant nor quick experience. Had a couple that had been trying to get pregnant for over a year without success. Turns out they did the deed once and were waiting. Per our professor, she was counseling a couple and was starting to consider doing fertility tests before it came out that the couple were using protection every single time. Probably to all our benefit. Yeah, that's like a non-lethal Darwin Award. When you were told not to eat 12 hours prior to surgery, it wasn't a polite suggestion. We had a patient coming in who we told not to eat or drink anything, even water. So he drank Gatorade since we told him he couldn't have water. I worked in an ER and saw this more than once. Last case, parents brought their child in for surgery, let her eat a full breakfast because she was hungry. She vomited aspirated bacon and eggs and ended up in the ICU on a ventilator so they could irrigate all the food out of her lungs. How did the parents react? Were they shocked or was it more like, yeah, we done messed up? They were devastated. They realized they'd made a horrible mistake. It's easy to blame them, but honestly, the average person doesn't fully grasp how dangerous surgery actually is. With the county corollary of, no, you can't smoke crystal just before surgery. I bet being an anesthesiologist is a great time. Sir, do you want to wake up halfway through your surgery? Please frickin' listen to me. I shouldn't be surprised, but the amount of people who just don't pay any attention to the medical professionals caring for them is mind-boggling, from the junkies to the idiots who believe they're homeopaths and think they know more after one bullcrap article. An executive came in once complaining of bumps on her tongue. She was worried they might be cancer. I got to write my favorite encounter note thus far in my career. Complaint, bumps on tongue, asymptomatic, exam, taste buds, assessment, taste buds, plan, reassure. I'm a medical student, and earlier this year I was taking a history from a patient during a bedside tutorial where a senior doctor takes a group of us to see a patient together. I was speaking to this man about his symptoms and used the correct word for male organ. Begins with a P, to which he gave me a confused look. I said it again and he still didn't know what I was talking about. I ended up having to ask him if he had any pain in his Johnson while peeing in front of my classmates and my tutor. Keep in mind that this guy was in his 40s. I don't work in a medical profession, but I do work in another place where terrible diseases run rampant and staff spend every waking moment fighting them off. A school. There was nothing more bizarre than explaining germ theory to a teacher. She honestly didn't believe that such a thing could exist. She sincerely believed that sicknesses were caused by negative energy and bad auras, and insisted that it was fundamentally impossible for something as small as a germ to harm something as large as a human body, if something that small could even be alive in the first place. She spouted off something about how a creature that small would be incapable of living for more than a few seconds because energy can only get so small, and a germ, she did finger quotes, could only hold energy to live for 1 or 2 seconds at most. These are the people educating your kids. For everyone asking what she taught, grades 1 to 3. Not exactly the kind of place I'd worry about her voodoo even needing to be brought up, but it shook my faith in her ability to be objective about other things, so I'm still uncertain. I mean, imagine if she was convincing an entire class of 3rd graders that they do not need to wash their hands. Caring for a woman in her 80s, I had to explain to her that you don't pee out of your hoo-ha. There is, in fact, another hole. I'm a veterinarian and I don't understand owners sometimes. I work at a clinic of a vet who's also a private animal nutritionist, so sometimes we do house calls for special cases. Client Bob's dog isn't eating well and he has no clue why. I go over and ask him to show me his feeding routine for his dog. He fills a bowl with kibble and the dog seems super excited to eat. I crap you not, he then goes over to the fridge, takes out the ketchup, and drenches the kibble with ketchup. By this point, my jaw is hanging open in shock, and I can see that the dog has suddenly lost its enthusiasm for the meal. I ask Bob politely what he's doing, and he tells me that his entire family has ketchup on every meal. I then spend the next 15 minutes explaining to him that his dog may not like ketchup on its food. Now the dog eats great, and apparently I'm a miracle worker. I work at a vet clinic on weekends, and the amount of junk people feed their pets on a regular basis is astounding. I kid you not, we had a lady board her dog with us for the weekend. She bought toys, treats, bedding, even though we have our own and prefer to use that in case theirs is damaged or lost, but no food. Not a problem, we have food here and we even have tricks to make them eat, like putting some canned ID with their food. She gives our receptionist $40 and says, "Here's the money for his chicken McNuggets, he likes those, feed him 10 pieces a day." The receptionist flat out told this woman no and even bought the vet out to explain why we would not do that at our facility. I totally thought that the story was going to be dog won't eat kibble, owner doesn't understand why, turns out dog has been eating 3-course meals with owner, but he hasn't eaten his food for days. That's actually not too far off from what I see sometimes. Family will feed their dog copious amounts of table scraps and then wonder why he never touches the dog food. And why he has pancreatitis. And now, back to human beings, folks. Sticking the blade of a steak knife in your butt won't cure your constipation. I really wish this was a joke. That just because you take medication that controls your ailments, it doesn't mean you don't have them anymore. I ask plenty of older people if they have any medical history and frequently get "no" as an answer, only to look at their med list and find out that they're on a dozen medications. Why do you take this blood pressure medication? Oh, because I used to have high blood pressure. Nope, not how it works. That yes, guys can be nurses too. I'm a guy, And nurse. No, I'm not a doctor. Yes, maybe I should have been a doctor instead. Or maybe a woman should be a doctor instead if she likes it more. Paramedic here. I had to tell a 19-year-old that she needed to change her tampon more than once a month. She was in septic shock, by the way. I'm a guy. Even I know you've got to change that crap out. My sister is an ER doctor in Chicago. She once had to explain to a Mormon couple on their wedding night how to do the deed. The 19-year-old man had taken his 18-year-old bride into the ER, convinced his wife didn't have a hoo-ha. She also had to tell a mother of 4 that giving your children a heavy dose of vodka did not kill the bacteria in their bodies when they got colds. She also had to report that, obviously. She found a very frightened 23-year-old girl who came into the ER very afraid because she had found a growth in her crotch. It was her pleasure button. When my sister was asking her how she had never noticed it before, the girl responded, "My mom told me that if I touched my area, that the devil would get me." The girl had lived for 23 years without ever touching or seeing her own hoo-ha. I guess when she would wipe, she would just blot the outside quickly or something? A female patient came in and told the doctor that she'd been bleeding every month down there, thinking it had something to do with the birth of her daughter. Yeah, I can't emphasize enough the importance of teaching this stuff in schools. 2 things. 1 is to take all the medication even if you feel better at day 3. And 2, you do not give your kid the leftover medication from part 1 when he has the same symptoms a week later. Wanting someone to make you a cup of tea is not a good reason to call an ambulance. For everyone asking, yes, I made the tea. After a half-hour blue light run, might as well. Left to my own devices, I wouldn't have made that tea. I was a student at the time and was told to do so by my mentor. In the UK, social care is part of our remit, so it kind of makes sense. I work in a hospital. I was getting some history from this lady when she told me she was allergic to epinephrine, i.e. adrenaline. You know, the stuff in EpiPens that you give to people when they have an allergic reaction to stop anaphylaxis reaction. So I asked her what reaction she had last time she was given epinephrine, and she told me that it made her heart race, and she couldn't settle down. Had to explain to her that means it worked. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.